This tourist destination has the highest entrance price of all. It could cost you your life. Those who spend over 16 hours in the death zone, and it is the official name of the most dangerous area on Mount Everest, risk never returning home. Those who endure 48 hours there will almost certainly never see their families again. The altitude in this region is over 26,000 feet, and winds can reach speeds of 62 miles per hour, sweeping everything, including you, off their path. Only one person has stood tall in this hostile environment for 90 hours. There was a bit of cheating involved, as it was with supplemental oxygen. Yep, the precious O2 gas is extremely scarce there. Without this vital resource, the maximum time someone can survive is about 21 hours. A record set by this guy. Yeah, he was tough. He reached the Everest peak 10 times. His fastest ascent took slightly under 17 hours, but Pemba broke his record, ascending Everest in 8 hours and 10 minutes. However, these accomplishments are not feats for the average Joe. These record holders have, in a sense, won a genetic lottery. Both are Nepalese Sherpas, hence the names. Sherpas are native to the mountains and have evolved a natural resistance to high-altitude living. Despite the undeniable dangers, people seem unwilling to stop visiting the death zone. Since the establishment of climbing records, over 300 people have lost their lives there. Last year alone, 18 people perished, and as of July 2024, the death zone has claimed 8 lives. Now, as creepy as it may sound, the death zone on Mount Everest resembles a graveyard. The challenge lies in that of recovering a body from this perilous location costs families a fortune. Oxygen alone, which is necessary to descend a body, can amount to as much as 20 grand. This may seem far-fetched, but the operation requires 12 people, each needing an oxygen cylinder that costs around $400. So, do the math. And it's not just the oxygen. Imagine the other expenses summed up. Still, it's not only the money. The retrieval process is fraught with danger for those tasked with it, causing many private companies to decline such requests. Recently, authorities managed to recover 4 bodies and a skeleton from the treacherous area. While not all of them have been identified, one body belonged to an individual who passed away in 2017, remaining in the death zone for 7 years. El Caminito del Re in Spain, Maluga, may look like child's play compared to Everest death zone, as reportedly it has only claimed 6 lives. But still, this is eerie. Imagine you're standing on an old piece of wood some people dare to call a walkway that seems to be about to fall apart. You can't really move freely on it, as it's just 3 feet wide, and if you look down, you'll see nothing but a river 330 feet below you. You may want to sarcastically call it an engineering wonder, but in reality, it really is. Look, it seems like this walkway was glued to the side of a cliff. The tools and technique used to build it were quite rudimentary and unsafe, which is not surprising. The pathway is over a century old. If you're wondering how it was built without any machinery we have today, let me explain. The poor builders just hung off the side of the mountain using ropes. It's obvious no one wanted to work on that project, so prisoners who had received the death penalty were invited to participate. In exchange, they could get a reduction in their sentences, if they made it out alive, of course. Now, originally the walkway was built to connect workers at the hydroelectric power plants by some local waterfalls. You know, just a little bridge to help them cross while transporting materials and keeping things in check at the channel. The construction kicked off in 1901 and wrapped up by 1905. The walkway was famously crossed by King Alfonso XIII in 1921 during the inauguration of a dam. This pathway has seen some rough times by the early 2000s and was partly closed for over a decade. 4 years of renovations and €9 million later, it burst back onto the scene in 2015. It has gained a reputation as the world's most dangerous walkway due to a couple of tragic accidents in the late 90s. Now you can stroll along a 1.8-mile path that hugs the edge of the gorge. Hey, remember I told you this Caminito only took 6 lives? Forget it. Nobody knows how much it really was. Alright, the next cliff destination may seem totally safe at first glance, but it's all about a very particular activity performed there. It's definitely not as high up in the sky as El Caminito del Re, only soaring 89 feet, but this cliff is meant to jump from, and people actually do that. Now, if you were to take a watermelon and give it a dramatic drop into the water below, you'd end up with a spectacular crimson splash of watermelon juice, looking like a crime scene. It would plummet at a wild speed of 53 miles per hour, and it begs the question, can a human handle that kind of dive? Spoiler alert, absolutely. Welcome to Red Bull cliff diving, where brave athletes take the plunge from heights equivalent to an 8-story building. But before you think about trying this for kicks, let me tell you, it takes serious fitness to pull it off. The better your shape is, the better your dive, but it's also all about your peepers. Your eyes become your ultimate navigation system as you make that fearless leap. Fearless? The impact is no joke. If you dare to jump, you'll feel around 5 G-force on impact. For comparison, when you're on a commercial flight, even during the craziest turbulence, you rarely feel more than 1.3 G-force. But when you dive from a cliff, your heart's working overtime, and that 5 G-force can leave you lightheaded in no time. Your brain starts to feel a bit oxygen-starved, and before you know it, you could black out in a few seconds. All that blood suddenly rushes to your head, your face puffs up, and your lower eyelids practically cover your eyes. This phenomenon is called red out, because all you see is a bright glow through those squeezed-shut eyelids. Yeah, that sounds like fun. Now, unlike all those cliffs, this place is pretty accessible, and is popular among freedivers for having little current, which is good when you go in depth. However, despite all those seemingly nice aspects of the Blue Hole in Egypt, this place has taken around 200 lives in recent years. Now, to be honest, technically, the Blue Hole is a complete average dive spot. There's nothing extraordinary that would make it more dangerous than any other spot in the Red Sea. However, diving through the arch at the Blue Hole is no joke. It's a tricky, submerged tunnel that has seen its fair share of accidents. While there's no official count of how many have lost their lives here, one source estimates that around 130 divers perished there between 1997 and 2012. That's more than 8 each year. Some say the number could be as high as 200, including a few snorkel-related accidents not tied to the arch dive. To help keep things safe, Egyptian authorities placed a police officer at the Blue Hole who make sure divers are with certified guides who know the ropes. Now, the arch itself sits 170 feet down, which means you really need to know what you're doing and have the right gear, since recreational divers usually max out at around 100 feet or so. For experienced technical divers, it's mostly manageable. The real challenge is keeping track of your air in your tank, because if you mess up and take too long down there, you're going to need more than one tank of air to get through safely. If the gas isn't planned out right, you could find yourself short on air when you need to do your decompression stops, or even worse, you can run out of it completely. And, that would be bad. Would you like a professional stylist to fold your luggage, a private chef to cook meals just for you, and an entire plane to transport your TV set that didn't fit in your private jet? That's pretty much the everyday travel reality for the top 0.1% of U.S. earners who made around $3 million per year in 2022. Compare that to the regular salary of a working American of around $60,000. And then there's the top 1% who made around $800,000 the same year. If you want to travel like the richest people in the world, forget about chilling at one luxury hotel with shampoo made of gold for 2 weeks. The latest trend in upscale traveling is surf and turf, Rich guests spend a week on a sleek yacht after staying at a luxury hotel, or the other way around. Boat sales have surged in recent years, and the rich love to charter sailboats for $25,000 a week to as much as $90,000. It's a great way to get away from the common folk, you know. Everything is pre-planned by their travel agents, so they don't have to worry about a thing. The ultra-wealthy can often opt for private islands or buy out entire hotels. For instance, a villa on a private island off the Cannes coast in France will cost you around $290,000 a week. It's in high demand, a reasonable price to pay for the absence of neighbors or traffic. And if you do miss the hustle and bustle at some point, you can always hop on a speedboat and dance the night away at one of the luxurious beach clubs. In 2023, Greece became the top destination for the richest 1% of travelers. Paros Island was the most mentioned new favorite. Italian Sicily lost its charm to them because it's overvisited by the White Lotus fans. And it's not just about the Four Seasons-operated San Domenico Palace, where the show was based, but the entire island. For winter fun, there's always Aspen and ski towns in the European wonderland, like Switzerland and France. They have exclusive hotels, Michelin-starred restaurants, high-end shops, and chalets that look richer and more luxurious than an average family house. If there's no natural snow, the artificial snow system solves the problem. Some of the best hotels have direct access to lifts that take guests to the main skiing slopes. For those who aren't fans of the European resorts, there are always the Seychelles, where you can rent a villa for about $11,000 per night at a private island resort. George and Amal Clooney like to come here. Those who don't find it cool or exclusive enough go to Antarctica by private jet from Cape Town. The trip that lasts less than 24 hours costs $195,000. Richard Branson prefers to take his vacations to a private Necker Island, is part of the British Virgin Islands, and has some beautiful wildlife around it to explore. Guests rent the whole place for $80,000 per night. There's enough room for 34 people, but not all billionaires like to share, you know. People who are among the world's richest like to be at events where they can meet like-fortuned ones. Events like the World Economic Forum in Davos, where a standard steak will cost you $150 and a drink will be $40. Then there are horse races, Miami or Singapore yacht shows, or Dubai International Boat Show. For those who love movies or showing off their lavish dresses, the Sundance Film Festival in Utah, the Cannes Film Festival in France, or Venice International Film Festival in Italy could be good options. Sports lovers travel to events like the US Open Golf Tournament and other golf cups, the Wimbledon Tennis Tournament in the UK, the Melbourne Cup in Australia, or the Monaco Grand Prix for those who love speed and expensive cars. Those who can't live without style and like to be trendsetters don't miss fashion weeks in New York, London, Milan, and Paris. For music and crazy luxurious building lovers, there are always opera balls, like the one in Vienna, Austria, or La Scala Opera House opening night in Milan, Italy. And then, of course, there are special events like birthdays. When she was turning 22, billionaire Kylie Jenner rented a super yacht for over $1 million per week. An average person would have to save up for years to rent this vessel, even for one day. Okie dokie, so they need to find a way to get to their deluxe point B, right? Well, more and more people opt for private jets. You can fly at any time, even during restrictions on commercial air travel, to any place. And you won't have to choose between chicken or pasta when the flight attendant finally reaches your seat, 35D. There are around 22,000 business aircraft worldwide, and the number is only going up. Most of these jets are in the US, and Brazil takes the second place. Germany is the leader in Europe and only ranks 5th on the global list. Now, if for some reason they aren't traveling to their destination by a private jet and decide to share first class with other passengers, they'll at least need to ship their luggage instead of taking it on the plane with them. The luggage of the wealthy gets picked up from their door and awaits them at the luxurious suite or yacht on the other side of the journey. And if they want it to be done within one day, they need to pay hundreds of dollars for one bag. By the way, you don't expect them to pack their bags all by themselves, do you? It's much easier to hire someone for thousands of dollars to go through all that trouble. A professional stylist picks all the clothes that will look picture perfect and then rolls the items, puts them in bags, and makes lists of what's inside and what goes with what. The clothes aren't included in the stylist's compensation, of course, so they add another 1,000 or 10 to the vacation grand total. Although the ultra-rich travelers can afford to rent any car while traveling, not all of them like to sit in a vehicle that belongs to someone else. That's why they choose to ship their own luxurious cars to their destination. It costs around $36,000 to fly a Porsche from Dubai to London with Emirates. It's enough money to buy a brand new family hatchback in the UK, but most billionaires don't like this type of vehicle. Some wealthy travelers don't trust commercial airlines and prefer to charter a cargo plane to transport their vehicles. Sometimes they take a whole bunch of cars, motorbikes, and other expensive toys. Covered trucks in the country of destination transport all this beauty to the client's address or a garage of their choice. Owners don't like stranger delivery drivers to add miles to their shiny vehicles. This whole delivery service costs several millions. Some cars have only sentimental value for their own and are worth way less than their deluxe delivery. One really well-off man even hired a cargo plane for his Samsung TV that couldn't fit through the door of his jet. Oh, rich people's problems. They can afford to eat at any restaurant in the world, but it would be too mainstream, so they prefer to bring their private chefs on vacation. These professional cooks know their clients' diets and health goals. For luxury travelers, consistency and routine are too important to trade them for public restaurants. For chefs, it's often a chance to travel for free and get a good salary at the same time. Sometimes the clients will even fly the family of the chef with them if traveling happens over the holidays. This job has high demands and can be really stressful with varied working hours. Sometimes they have to spontaneously cook dinners for 16 people or find rare ingredients at locations with basic grocery stores. And of course, everything they overhear during meals must remain a top secret.
It's your first trip to Egypt, and your new friends there invited you for lunch. The food seems a bit dull, so you decide to spice it up with salt and pepper. You don't see it on the table, so you ask the host for it, and you notice everyone's shocked. It turns out, it's a huge insult to the cook when someone wants to change the original taste of the food on their plate. The cook made it that way for a reason, and wanting to spice it up means showing that the dish wasn't good enough. You're used to doing it as a kind gesture around the world, but don't tip waiters, taxi drivers, or hotel workers in Japan. They can get offended because they already get paid for providing you with good service, and there's no need for extra money to make it any better. If you really want to show appreciation, just say thank you. It's okay to tip private guides, tour companies, and interpreters. You can put any amount that feels right to you in an envelope and hand it down to them. If you want to impress your new Japanese friends or colleagues, take some time to study chopstick etiquette. When you master the art of holding chopsticks, remember not to rub them together. People do it to remove splinters, so it might look like you're unhappy with the quality of the pair that your host provided you with. Don't put your chopsticks vertically in your bowl of rice. This way, it can be seen as an offering to the deceased. Don't wave chopsticks in the air or use them to point at things. Both are considered really rude. The same is with moving things with your chopsticks or the hand holding them. It looks disrespectful, plus you're likely to spill things. When in Italy, don't order a cappuccino after noon. The locals don't do it because they believe the milk and foam turn this drink into a meal, and it's not good for digestion. Also, be prepared to enjoy your coffee standing at the bar and pay for it before you even order it. First, you pay the cash register. Then, show the receipt to the server to get your drink. Are you a big fan of chewing gum? Well, you'll have an uneasy time in Singapore. Using, selling, and importing chewing gum is banned there, and you'd have to pay up to several thousands of dollars for doing it. This law was introduced in the 1990s to make the city cleaner and keep the local fast trains up to schedule. When they launched a new transit system, passengers stuck gum onto train door sensors, causing some serious delays. With the new rules, this problem was solved. The no gum policy, along with many other strict rules, did help to make Singapore a really clean and fine city. Pun intended. If you absolutely can't imagine your life without chewing, the local authorities recommend replacing the gum with bananas. When someone asks you to pass them something, like salt at the table in Bolivia, don't give it directly to them. Hand it to the person sitting next to them, and they'll pass it for you. If the person next to you is asking for that little favor, you still can't hand it straight to them. The person next to you will have to help. This table etiquette comes from a superstition that handing something to someone directly into their hands brings bad luck. For the same reasons, you can't reach across the table or stand up to pass something or toss it to someone. And don't forget to keep both hands on the table when you aren't eating. It might look like you're trying to hide something if your hands aren't visible at all times. When you arrive for a meal in Jordan, the hosts may give you some bitter Arabic coffee as a warm welcome. Don't try to stretch it for the rest of the evening. The polite thing to do is empty it fast. Only when everyone's done with the drink do people go back to socializing. As you pass the empty cup to the hosts, make sure to jiggle your wrists. If you just pass it without jiggling, it will mean you're asking for a refill. Don't rush to arrive at an event on time in Venezuela. People might think that you're rude or greedy. The polite thing to do is to be 10 to 15 minutes late. Events scheduled for 7 o'clock will often begin at 8 o'clock or later. A popular story goes that in the 1980s, a foreign reporter arrived at a press event more than an hour late. When he saw the room was mostly empty, he went to apologize to the host for missing the event. The host then told him he was the first reporter to arrive. It's quite interesting because the clocks in this country have officially been 0.9 seconds ahead of the rest of the world for years. Are you planning to travel by bus in Ireland anytime soon? Don't forget to thank the driver for the ride on your way out of the bus. You'll hear an overwhelming majority of locals do it loudly, as it's basically not optional. Choose the gift wisely if you've been invited to a home in Vietnam. It's okay to bring fruit, sweets, or incense. Handkerchiefs are believed to be a symbol of a sad farewell, and cutting tools are a sign of cutting relationships. So don't bring those. Wrap your gift in colorful paper and don't opt for black. The locals believe this color to be a bad omen. When you present the gift, hold it with both hands. And don't be surprised if the hosts don't open it right away. It's done after the giver has left. Don't leave anything on your plate in India. It's a sign of disrespect for the food you were served. Food is considered sacred in the country, so it would upset your hosts a lot. So, wash and dry your hands before starting the meal. Don't forget to praise the cook and wait for the eldest to stand up before you leave the table. In South India, it's common to serve food on a banana leaf. You gotta fold it over from the top when you're done with the meal. Folding it from the bottom means you weren't satisfied with what you got. It might be a good conversation starter elsewhere, but don't brag about your achievements in Denmark. The locals believe that everyone is equal, so you won't hear them talk about their successful careers or talents or how special they are. And they expect the same from you. If you're looking for a good topic, they'll gladly talk to you about the greatness of their country. The Danes are really proud of it and all its wonders. If you're going on a trip to Germany and plan to drive on the famous Autobahn, make sure to tank up before you hit the road. Stopping, parking, making U-turns, and backing up on this super speedy highway is illegal. Yes, even if you have to stop because you've run out of gas, you'll have to pay a fine since you were supposed to plan things better. And although the Autobahn technically doesn't have a speed limit, watch out if you're passing by urban areas like Frankfurt, Berlin, and Munich, or construction works and heavy traffic. There will be special speed instructions for these spots. In case you're planning to explore Cyprus by car, quench your thirst before you start the vehicle. Drinking anything, including water, isn't allowed while driving on the island. So if you can't resist snacking or drinking behind the wheel, prepare to pay a fine. In Ethiopia, you gotta think twice before choosing a gift for someone. They see it as a debt they'll have to repay in the future. So, if you bring something really expensive, the receiver will either have to spend a lot of money on a return gift or feel indebted to you.
Now, before somebody gets married in India, they get a thorough, shall we say, snooping, sometimes without even being aware of that. There are pre-matrimonial detective agencies in India that provide services of private investigators. There are also spit inspectors. These people, also known as nuisance detectors, catch and give fines to those who litter or spit in public. One more profession you aren't likely to meet anywhere else is an ear cleaner. So the process of removing earwax requires some traditional instruments. They don't use Q-tips we're so used to. Their instruments are called the steel needle, some cotton, and a pincer. Yikes! The ear cleaner rolls some cotton around the needle so it looks like a Q-tip, and the clients have their ears cleaned. Ear cleaners usually can be found somewhere in the city center, around monuments, or at a local market. This profession is rare and exotic in today's India, but it used to be quite common. In this country, your dream may come true and you'll get paid for sliding down a water slide. The profession's called water slide tester, and these people have to control if the slides are both safe and fun. Usually these people work in various hotels and spend most of their time in planes, traveling from one resort to another. There's a village where locals have no locks on doors. Not a single house there has one. Even public toilets have no locks or doors, only a curtain, thank you. It might seem somewhat reckless, but in fact, it's one of the safest places out there. The locals lean a wooden stick against the door just to keep the stray dogs out of their houses. The only police station opened there only in 2015, and still there are no complaints. Even the local bank has no lock. It's officially the only bank in the world that's never locked. When the locals are out of town, they don't ask the neighbors to look after their houses, and they're not afraid to leave valuables, money, and jewelry without hiding them. Vegetarian dishes are quite popular in India. Between 15 and 30% of the whole country's population are vegetarian. Some people tend to eat fish only and never eat any land animals. Many large food chains, famous for yummy meat dishes, even provide a whole new vegetarian menu for India. Cutlery isn't really required for many traditional Indian dishes. They say that mouth-watering curry tastes even better if eaten with the fingers. Now, I would assume that you'd want to eat the fingers separately, but hey, just thinking out loud here. There's also a wide range of crazy traditional dishes, but there's one called… okay, let's just put it on the screen, thanks. It's made from potatoes, which are pretty common for Indian food. The exotic part is that the potatoes in the dish are actually extra old. Even more, they're rotten. And there's a bunch of traditional spices. It's just a side dish, you'll need to choose the main course. Samosas are another traditional Indian dish made of potatoes. They're deep-fried and look like dumplings, and they're both a side dish and a main course. Now, if you love sugar, don't forget to thank India for it. It was first extracted and refined there about 2,500 years ago. Then the Chinese picked up the technique, and it spread all over the world. Another thing you should be grateful to India for is shampoo. The very first version was made from dried herbs, some extracts, and water. Soap berries and soap nuts were widespread in India, so this component was a perfect match for the shampoo formula. It's probably because of the right shampoos that most Indians have absolutely stunning hair and cool hairstyles. By the way, in India, It's possible to cut clients' hair with fire. It's not that widespread, though. Only one barber is said to do it. First, they sprinkle the hair with some flammable powder, then they light it up and literally set the hair on fire. While the hair's burning, the stylist creates the right shape with the help of 2 combs. He says the fire helps fix the hair right. He also claims to have at least 15 clients each day who come to get this very cut. He sure makes it look like it's a cinch to do. If you like holidays, India is the destination for you. Indians have about 1,000 various festivals and events. Sometimes people even celebrate the first hair cutting, or who knows, hair burning. All of the local celebrations are totally worth seeing. Holi is the festival of colors, and people consider it to mark the beginning of spring. It starts at the end of February and finishes in March. It involves the famous powder throwing, so don't wear that brand new white shirt to the festival. Diwali is the celebration of lights that lasts 5 days. People give gifts to each other, usually sweets, and light thousands of candles and oil lamps. No other country in the world has that many celebrations. India holds a lot of world records too. The largest sundial in the world is located in the town of Jaipur. It's a tower 90 feet tall. It's made of polished stone and looks like an architectural masterpiece. The shadow of this sundial moves at about 2.5 inches per minute, so you can see the time literally move there. Another longest thing in India are nails. According to the Guinness World Records, the longest fingernails ever belong to an Indian man. They're almost as long as a London double-decker bus. He cut them off back in 2018, but before, the total length of all his fingernails had reached 358 inches. There's also a record for the quantity of movies produced per year. In 2018, 1,813 new movies were filmed in India. The quantity is so impressive that if you wanted to watch all the movies made in the country in 2018 and you watched a movie per day, you'd still be watching them today in 2021. North Sentinel Island, which is a part of India, is probably the world's most remote place since nobody can visit it. Strangers aren't welcome there. The locals are quite introverted and would always reject any contact from outside. No ship is allowed to come closer than 5 nautical miles, and special people always patrol the area. It's one of the very few places in the world that has no modern civilization. Recently, the island's been open to the researchers, but tourists still can't visit it. Several years ago, 2 frogs got married in one coastal town named Udupi. It was done to encourage the rainfall. It was too hot, over 120 degrees Fahrenheit. Both animals had unique outfits for this occasion, and the bride even had a toe ring. The 2 frogs were sent off on a honeymoon to Manipala and were released there. Sadly, each of these guys had to go their own way a couple of months later because the locals had to stop the downpour that started soon after their wedding somehow. There are not 4 but 6 seasons overall here. According to the North, West, and Central Indian calendars, Indian spring is in March and April. Next comes summer, also known as hot season. It starts in May and finishes in June. It's also one of the marriage seasons. Next comes monsoon, also known as rainy season. It starts after the summer solstice, usually in July, and lasts throughout August. Next comes fall, which spreads from late September to mid-November. After fall, they have a pre-winter or simply cool season. The real winter or cold season starts in January and goes on until February. In fact, there are many more other calendars in India, but all of them have 6 seasons with slight differences. The Statue of Unity is actually twice as tall as the Statue of Liberty, reaching 600 feet. It was open to the public only about 2 years ago, back in 2018. The statue consists of 5 parts, but only 3 of them are accessible to visitors. The first part starts at the statue base and finishes at the shins. This zone has 3 levels and includes the exhibition area, a garden, and a museum. The second part reaches up the statue's thighs. The third one has a viewing spot at a height of 500 feet. The fourth part is the maintenance area, and visitors can't get there. Finally, the 5th one comprises the shoulders and head. In the first 11 days after its opening, almost 130,000 tourists came to see this colossal statue. That's more than the population of the capital of Kansas, Topeka. Apparently, a whole lot of people showed up Topeka at this statue. Yeah, pun intended.
Picture this. You're planning your dream holiday, but instead of going to a tropical beach or a bustling city, you're thinking about going to space. Imagine yourself floating, weightless, looking down at Earth from a whole new perspective. The beauty and wonder of our planet become even more evident when you're viewing it from a distance. And now, this dream can come true. Yes, you heard that right. Space tourism. Space tourism is something that has fascinated people for generations. This idea has been around for almost 20 years. We've seen it in movies and read about it in stories. But now, thanks to advancements in technology, it's finally becoming a reality. The first space tourist was a businessman named Dennis Tito. He visited the International Space Station in 2001. Sounds incredible, but here's the catch. Tito's trip cost a mind-boggling $20 million. That's a lot of money, and it made space travel seem like a dream that only the super rich could afford. And it's true that space tourism can be quite expensive. But a lot of time has passed since that day. And now, space tourism is becoming more attainable for people who aren't billionaires. Of course, the industry is still in its early stages, but the demand for it is skyrocketing, pun intended. Experts believe that it will continue to grow at an incredible rate of around 40% every year from 2023 to 2030. So, with all this in mind, let's talk about what awaits us in the near future. There are different types of space tourism. First up, we have suborbital spaceflight. It's the trip where you reach an altitude of over 300,000 feet, which is way higher than any airplane can go. In fact, it's so high that you cross a special line called the Kármán line, which marks the boundary of outer space. How cool is that? So it's basically like a quick jump into space and back. So let's talk a bit more about suborbital spaceflight. Imagine you want to go on vacation to Sydney, but you live in London. Normally, it would take you about 22 hours to get there by plane. That's a really long time to sit on a plane. But guess what? Scientists and engineers are working on a new way of traveling that could make the journey from England to Australia super fast and exciting. Suborbital space trips could be used for quick travel between different cities on Earth. Instead of flying in a regular airplane, you would hop on a spacecraft that can go really, really fast. According to a recent study, in the near future, it might be possible to fly from London to Sydney in less than 2 hours. Just imagine how amazing that would be. You would zoom up into space, see the Earth from above, then come back down in no time at all. What an adventure! This study, conducted by the UK's Civil Aviation Authority, was all about understanding how our bodies react to trips outside Earth's atmosphere. To figure this out, the researchers needed some brave volunteers. They recruited 24 healthy people between the ages of 32 and 80. These volunteers were taken to a special training facility called an RAF centrifuge in Cranwell. A centrifuge is a big machine that looks like a giant spinning chair. The volunteers were sat in there to experience a simulation of spaceflight. They were spun around, and their bodies felt the pressure and changes in gravity that happen when you go into space. Almost everyone handled the simulation pretty well and quickly returned to normal. One person even briefly lost consciousness, but it was because of the gravitational forces, and they recovered soon after. Now, this study found some surprising things. Many people think that you have to be really fit and young to handle space flights. But the research showed that older people can actually cope better with all this gravity craziness. So even if we don't develop space tourism in the next decade or two, you'll still have a chance to visit space even when you get old. Right now, there are two big players in the suborbital spaceflight game: Virgin Galactic and Blue Origin. Both of these companies have rocket-powered systems that can take up to 6 passengers on a thrilling ride. Virgin Galactic has already had 4 successful flights, but they recently ran into some financial trouble. On the other hand, Blue Origin has flown 32 passengers on their new Shepard rocket. The catch is pretty obvious. Right now, space tourism is super expensive. Companies can charge a whopping £350,000 per seat for these flights. But don't worry, things are about to change soon. Experts believe that space tourism will grow in the coming decades. It will be kinda similar to what happened to airplanes. Right now, the cost of a quick trip to space is very high. But as time goes on, the prices will go down. Eventually, space tourism will become more affordable and accessible to people all around the world. That means not just our children, but many of us will have a chance to experience the wonders of space. As technology advances, we might even be able to plan rocket-powered holidays in the future. Can you imagine telling your friends that you went on a vacation to space? What a flex! And now, let's talk about orbital spaceflight. This is the real deal, where you get to spend more time in space. Instead of just a few minutes, you can spend anywhere from a few days to over a week up there. And we're not talking about a measly 300,000 feet anymore. We're talking about going over 1.3 million feet high. So whether you're up for a quick jump into space or a longer adventure orbiting our planet, space tourism has something for everyone. Sky is no longer the limit. But space tourism isn't all fun and games. There are some challenges we need to consider too. First off, let's talk about the environment. Launching spacecraft and rockets takes a lot of energy and can create air and noise pollution. This can seriously harm our atmosphere. We don't want to trade a cool space trip for a damaged planet, right? Next, there's the issue of safety. Space travel is still risky, and accidents can happen. Even with safety protocols in place, there's always a chance of something going wrong. And if it does, the consequences could be really, really bad. Yikes! Space debris is another concern. Every time a spacecraft is launched, it leaves behind debris that can stay in orbit for a long time. As more launches happen, the amount of debris keeps growing. This can cause problems for other spacecraft, and even small pieces of debris can cause damage. Space travel also requires a lot of resources like energy, fuel, and materials. Using up these resources too quickly could have long-term consequences for our planet and future generations. We need to make sure we're not depleting everything in our quest for space exploration. Oh, and let's not forget about all the legal stuff. The rules and regulations for space tourism are still evolving, and it's not always clear who should be responsible if something goes wrong. Plus, there are concerns about how space tourism might affect international space laws and treaties. We don't want legal chaos in the final frontier. And finally, to achieve our dream of taking spaceships like planes, we'll need better infrastructure and logistics. We'll need to build more spaceports where spaceships can take off and land. But don't worry, scientists are actively working to solve these problems. Remember, it's not just us who are excited about space tourism, even governments are joining the fun. Many countries are investing in space tourism too. It's a global phenomenon. So even though there's still a lot to develop in this industry, it's pretty obvious that the aviation industry might go through a big revolution. Traveling long distances would become much quicker and more exciting. And judging by the way development is going, the first big breakthrough in this area will be made in North America. So, get ready for a new era of travel. What an exciting time to be alive, right? The universe is calling, and it's time for us to answer. Stay tuned!
You know how they say, when in Rome, do as the Romans do? Meaning, in Rome, you need to make sure your goldfish has a deluxe bowl to live in. In Nigeria, don't you dare to bring your own wheelbarrow. And perish the thought of adding as much mayo as you want to your dish when you're in France. Yep, bans around the world may be surprising, to say the least. Number 1. You will never see a good old doorknob in Vancouver, Canada. Some time ago, the city changed its building code to require the use of cool and sleek door levers instead. This change is all about making buildings more accessible and easier to use. Not only new buildings are getting a new makeover, even Vancouver's historic City Hall had its fancy Art Deco doorknobs replaced with shiny gold levers. But it's not that you can't legally have it in your house. There isn't a team of doorknob police coming to your house to confiscate your knobs. You can keep them as long as you like. Number 2 comes with a GeoGuessr tip for y'all. If you see this chair in the picture, it means it's 100% not in Basel, Switzerland. It's called a monoblock chair, and it's special. You see, most objects give away clues about when and where they're from, like the shape of electrical outlets or the labels on your shampoo bottle. But the monoblock is context-free. Some people call them one of the world's most perfectly designed objects, while others say the homogeneous nature of the chair is disturbing and the real evil of globalization. But why is it banned in Basel? Turns out the authorities just want the city to be pretty, and the chair design isn't to their liking. Right, if you want to keep one in your backyard, feel free. But they've been a big no in public spaces since 2008. 3. If you were ever thinking of bringing a wheelbarrow to Nigeria, I've got some news for you. Don't even try. Should you need it for some reason during your stay in Nigeria, just buy one there when you arrive. The authorities won't let you bring your imported wheelbarrow across the border. Why? Well, they're all about supporting their own manufacturing industry, so they want to give their local wheelbarrow makers a chance to shine. At number 4, we've got China, where the authorities decided to put a stop to time travel. Wait a minute, it's not what you think. No time travel machine has been invented. The ban is on TV shows and movies. By the way, it's not something new. The law was introduced in the early 2010s. Apparently, the big shots in charge want to keep things real and are not too keen on distorting historical events. They say some scripts are getting a bit too wild, making up myths, promoting superstition, and disrespecting the country's past. 5. Coffee pods. They've become super popular because they make brewing coffee so easy. But Hamburg, Germany doesn't seem to be a fan of those pods. Around 8 years ago, they took a stand by banning plastic coffee pods from authorities' offices. These little pods are made of various materials, making recycling a real challenge. While it's true that these coffee capsules can create a lot of problems, they're still loved by many. In fact, they've become a big hit in the US and Europe, making up a chunk of the coffee market. Hamburg is hoping to lead the way in showing people just how wasteful these pods really are. Number 6. Chewing gum. It has been banned in Singapore since 1992. The ban was put in place to stop people from sticking gum in all sorts of weird places, like subway doors, lock cylinders, and elevator buttons. Yuck. But costly train shenanigans were the last straw for the authorities. The ban was put in place after some serious gum incidents on the mass rapid transit or MRT trains in the late 80s. Some mischievous pranksters have been gumming up the works on MRT trains by sticking chewing gum on the door sensors. That caused a sticky situation and messed up train services. And there you have it, chewing gum got completely banned. Now, just a note here, yep, these are gums prescribed for therapeutic or dental reasons. And yep, they're still allowed. Also, don't get this whole ban wrong. It's not illegal to chew gum in Singapore. So if you come there as a tourist, you can bring in a little gum for personal use if you're traveling. Just do not stick it under this nice park bench, okay? What will create you a ton of troubles, though, is importing and selling chewing gum. Iceland is number 7 in our ban hit parade. Back in 1994, Reykjavik was like, no dogs allowed. It wasn't because they were all about cats, it was to stop this nasty tapeworm from spreading. The disease was serious business, causing all sorts of health problems. But don't worry, dogs are cool now as long as they follow the rules. Nowadays in Reykjavik, it's all about the cats. They're everywhere, roaming the streets like they, own the place. You can't walk 2 steps without seeing a furry little friend begging for attention. These Reykjavik kitties are so popular that they even have their own Facebook page. People love them, and some even carry around treats just in case they come across a friendly feline. And since there aren't many threats to cats in Iceland, they're thriving. 8. The Philippines. Now this one is really weird. Singing My Way in karaoke bars is sort of banned in this country. This seemingly harmless song has been linked to some pretty serious consequences, like fistfights and even people's early demise. No one knows the exact number of lethal cases caused by this song, but there have been at least a handful of incidents in the last 10 years. The song's lyrics, which can come off as a bit arrogant and prideful, seem to rile people up when sung in a not-so-great way. This has led some karaoke bars to unofficially ban the song to prevent any craziness from breaking out. 9. Hey, have you heard about Japan's Metabo law? It's all about measuring waist sizes to tackle obesity. It was introduced in 2008, and the idea was that if companies and local authorities didn't meet the goals, they would face financial penalties. The Ministry of Health believed this campaign would help prevent various health conditions. So, every year, people aged 40 to 75 had to get their waist measured. Employers and local authorities needed to make sure at least 65% of people participated. The goal was to reduce Japan's obesity rates by 25% by 2015, and if they hadn't made it, they would have gotten slapped with a fine. Did it work? Well, in 2024, there are only 4.5% of people who reportedly have weight issues in Japan. Number 10, and we're back to Canada. So if you catch someone in there counting out pennies in line, you can totally have some fun with them, legally speaking, of course. According to the Canadian Currency Act, there's a limit to the number of pennies you can use in a transaction, 25 to be exact. So, if someone tries using 26 coins, you can play sheriff and send them to coin jail. Snatch up their pennies as evidence. Yeah. 11. And a condiment-regulated country here. Apparently in France, they're cracking down on condiments in public schools. They're trying to make meals healthier for students. The rule is that you can't just go crazy with mayo, ketchup, and vinaigrette anymore. They have to be served according to the dish. Finally, Italy. In Rome, you can't keep your goldfish in a boring old glass bowl. Nope, that's considered cruel, because those little guys need their oxygen flow. Plus, if you keep them in a bowl for too long, they might go blind. Also, you can't give away goldfish as prizes. The law has a whole subsection about it. So if you're planning on bringing a goldfish home from your next trip to Rome, make sure you've got a fancy tank ready for them. And thank you for watching.
300,000 people and over 80,000 horses. Yep, that's Iceland. The breed they have there is very specific, hardy, long-lived, and because of it, internationally popular. These horses can be found in North America and Europe too, but they can have certain features people from Iceland don't want their breed to have. Because of that, the Icelanders wanted to avoid mixing their horses with other breeds, so they passed a law over 1,000 years ago that said no horse imports. That's right, even if they give you some of their own horses, you can't take them back. No chewing gum in Singapore. Vandals used to stick their chewing gum on door sensors, or would find some other way to mess with public transportation. So the country had to spend around $150,000 annually to clean that. It was easier to ban it by law, so no gum can be bought, sold, or blown into bubbles over there. Not a good idea to import them either. Going to Greece? Good. Have a safe trip. And pick the right shoes. Ever since 2009, no high heels are allowed at the Acropolis. Not that Greeks have anything against stilettos, but they simply wanted to protect their ancient ruins from damage those pointy things can cause. That, and the fact that it's not really practical for such terrain anyway. In the Italian city of Milan, it's illegal to frown in public. Or at least it was a couple of centuries ago. Through difficult historical times, Milan had to create a way to stand out, which is why there was a law requiring people to smile and generally be in a good mood in public places. Germany has highways where you can drive over 100 miles per hour. But if you get crazy with speed and run out of gas while still on a highway, you'll pay a nice fine for that. Are you 1 to 2 miles away from the gas station and want to get there on foot? Better not. That's another fine. Germans make it your responsibility for filling your car, and walking along the highway is not that safe, as is leaving your car on the side of the road. A Winnie the Pooh t-shirt. That brings back some good old memories. Well, memories are sometimes better left at home. Since Winnie doesn't wear pants, Poland decided to ban this character, so you can't have it on your clothes, around schools or playgrounds, no matter what age you are. Just in case you ever wake up and decide it's time to do some hiking in Switzerland without your clothes on, don't. For some unknown reason, some travelers made this type of hiking a thing in Switzerland a couple of years ago. So Swiss officials kindly ask you to keep your clothes on. Greetings from New Zealand. If you want to spend your Sunday afternoon flying with a rooster in a hot air balloon, you might have to find another country to do it, because here it's illegal. Sorry. Staying in their neighborhood, in 1966, there was a law that prevented you from flying a kite in Australia in a public space if that bothered other people. Luckily, 1966 was a long time ago, so no one will remember this if you decide to have some flying kite fun in a park. Hopefully. While you're there, you can't tie your goat to your vehicle. Also, no dressing as Batman and Robin. You don't want to prove to law enforcement you're not actual vigilantes, right? In some cities, taxi drivers must have a bale of hay in their trunks at all times. At least, they had to until 1980. This law came from the olden days, when horses were still all the rage. And you can't just fill a horse with fuel now, can you? Moving to the United States now. If you're in Washington, don't even think about going after Bigfoot. They passed a law in 1969 where Bigfoot was proclaimed to be an endangered species. So, they didn't say anything about the Yeti though. In Vermont, there used to be a rule prohibiting clotheslines, as some people voted against unsightliness of others' linen and underwear hanging in everyone's view. That's why they made a new regulation. You can't forbid people to put up clotheslines. One rule against another. Yep, that should work. Shh, can you hear that? Someone's talking behind this door. Oh, I wonder what they're saying. Stop right there! At least if you're in Oklahoma. The law says you can't secretly wander around and accidentally overhear someone's conversation and then repeat or publish it later. So if you have anything to share, go tell it to the people of Oklahoma. Your secret is safe there. If you ever take a walk in Nevada and then decide to lay down on the sidewalk and take some rest, think twice, since that's illegal there. Don't sit either. You won't get away with it. Nuances, you know. If you're from Baltimore, Maryland, remember not to bring your lion to the movies. I know the big cat wanted to see it badly, but rules are rules. Also, while you're there, remember a couple of more things you shouldn't violate. No saying bad words in public places. No eating while swimming in the ocean. And no sleeveless shirts in public parks. You shouldn't throw bricks onto a highway in Iowa, unless you get written permission from the city council. Well, when you think about it, it's fair enough. If you don't feel like looking at large shiny billboards all over the city, go to Hawaii, since they banned those in 1920. Well, definitely not the only reason to visit Hawaii, but it's good to know. Meanwhile, other states like Vermont and Maine followed suit and are proud of it. One town in Georgia takes eating fried chicken very seriously. No fork, you eat it with your hands. In fact, in 2009, a woman who celebrated her 91st birthday in a restaurant was eating chicken with a fork when the police came and told her she was under arrest. The lady was later pardoned, but careful how you eat your chicken in Georgia. What else is there to say? Speaking of which, do you know why the chicken crossed the road? Not sure, but what I do know is that these jokes certainly weren't made up in Georgia, since there, it's illegal for a chicken to do just that. You think silly string is fun? Well, a town in Alabama doesn't agree on that because it says a firm no to keeping, using, storing, selling, manufacturing, or giving away any kind of snap pops, spray string, or similar substances. Yikes. Also, when you're there, don't drive blindfolded. It's been passed as a law, which means they take the phrase, keep your eyes on the road, quite seriously. Okay, enough is enough. No more sleeping in a bathtub, donkey. Something people in Arizona must say to avoid breaking a law. In the 1920s, local people could see a rancher's donkey in a bathtub carried by a flood. The flood was caused because a local dam broke, and the tub was abandoned in the rancher's backyard. The donkey simply decided to take a nap in it. And you know how it goes. Long day, warm afternoon, post-lunch rest, just couldn't help it. After they managed to save the animal from the sailing tub, the town decided to prohibit donkeys from sleeping in a tub. You know, just in case. In Connecticut, a pickle must bounce in order for it to be considered a pickle. In the 1940s, 2 men were even arrested for selling pickles that weren't legitimate because they didn't bounce. Now, the question is, how exactly does a pickle bounce? More from the Meanwhile in Connecticut episode. It's illegal to cross a street while walking on your hands. Oh man, that's one of the hardest ones not to break. Your best friend is having a birthday. What could you give her? A spa day voucher? Tickets to Disneyland? Dinner at a fancy restaurant? A rat? Well, unfortunately, a rat is out of the legal game if you're in Montana. Well, you've got to respect the law. Luckily, if you're from Florida, rats are a completely fine gift. At least, way better than some bigger animals. Because while you're there, you need to pay parking fees for them. Camels, elephants, horses, and the rest of the animal crew. Sorry guys, you gotta respect the rules.
Who doesn't want to cut down on flight tickets when they're planning a trip? Here are some useful tips on how to get the best deals. Some cities like London and New York have more than one airport, so consider flying through alternate airports. Some of these airports are too far away from the city center. That's why tickets will be cheaper on the flights that land there. I tried this one myself. Well, I landed at a place that looked like a cargo airport, but hey, there was a bus from there to the city center. Pros, the ticket was cheap. Cons, I spent an extra hour on the road to get to the center. What's the prime day to book a ticket? That's a heated debate. Apparently, Tuesdays are better for booking a flight. More specifically, ticket fees at around 1:30 p.m. can be the cheapest. So, if you have plans to buy tickets for your dream vacation, go for a hunt on this specific day and time. There are great websites where you can compare flights and catch the cheapest ones, and I'll get to them soon. But don't ignore the official airline websites. Many of them announce private sales for those loyal customers who directly visit their pages. If your agenda allows you to play with your departure time, do that. Traveling on an early hour flight generally equals paying less for tickets. To catch a 6 a.m. flight, you have to get up when most of the people in the city are still enjoying their comfy beds. In the early hours, you might have problems with how to get to the airport. Not all public transport works 24 hours. Another problem would be your cat accidentally turning off your alarm. This is why these flights generally come cheaper. The same principle applies to late-night flights too. People generally don't want to fly after midnight, so prices drop accordingly. Look at the bright side. You have more time to wander around once you get to your destination. Flying with a connection is another way. It's a fairly cheap option, especially on longer haul flights. This method has a downside. Your plans can be changed with one word: delay. You might have to say goodbye to your connecting flight. Another thing you can do with connecting flights is to search for flights from the same country. Tourist destinations, megacities, and capitals are generally more expensive. Travel to a smaller city and then depart to your destination. Many of us love cookies, but probably not the ones in our browsers. Staying incognito in the flight searching process will help you get cheaper flights. How? Ticket prices depend on demand, so companies use the data on how many people search for which tickets. Let's say you look for tickets to London and regularly check the airline website to get a good deal. Your data signals that you have shown an interest in particular dates and a location. That's how you see that same flight suddenly gets more expensive. The airline knows that you're likely going to buy it. This can happen even if you refresh your browser. Either stay unidentified or clear your cookies to take yourself out of this situation. Remember I recommended that you visit the airline websites directly? You can also sign up for alerts on price drops. If you think notifications are annoying, even though they are useful, you can follow airlines on socials. Many companies use their social media accounts effectively, and they sometimes give customers some last-minute deals. In some cases, it's convenient to book tickets over the phone. For example, if you're in a group. Be aware, though, that some airlines add extra fees for completing a booking via a call. It can be as much as $50. You could get a day trip on your vacation with that money instead of spending it on words. If you must complete a booking by call, simply ask the person if they're going to charge you some additional fees for calling. While searching for a ticket, you can pretend you're in a different location. The best option is to change your location to the country you'll visit or the airline's home country. Let's say you'll go to Japan. Booking from the airline's website and changing your location via VPN would be the key to seeing lower prices. I said that I'd get to the flight comparison sites topic, and here I am. These websites are gems for giving you the best fares from several airlines and options. They recommend alternative routes that you haven't considered. Yet again, before clicking the confirm button, take a few seconds to check the airline's website. Booking directly and cutting out the middleman's fee can be a wiser option. The other potential benefit is reliable customer service. With some airlines, booking via a third party will turn this process into a tangled headphone cable like there's no tomorrow. I'll share a strategy for getting an entire row for yourselves. Imagine you're traveling with your BFF. One of you should book the window seat and the other one book the aisle seat. Other passengers will likely go for other seats and avoid the middle seat. This method cannot always work, though. If the plane is fully occupied, there'll be some unlucky person in between you. If someone books that middle seat, you can always offer them the aisle or window seat and continue to sit with your BFF. The second option is booking seats in the 13th row. Well, 13 doesn't have a good reputation, as it is superstitiously considered unlucky. Chances are, no one else books a seat from this particular number. This one is a gift to you for all your efforts to get the best possible deal. Good job you're in the airport. You're watching your favorite show while waiting for the gate to open. Boom! An hour of free airport Wi-Fi is over. Here's a loophole to double it. Roll back the time on your device. When you change the time zone back an hour, the system won't understand it and it'll allow you to use it for another hour. My 14th point is about safety. Did you know that you shouldn't swap seats before the plane takes off without letting the flight attendant know? This rule applies to changing your seat with a person from a different row, not to the person next to you. This can cause the plane to make an emergency landing. The reason is related to weight and how it's distributed. Every plane has a takeoff weight limit. This number comprises things like fuel, luggage, and passengers. Flight attendants look out for the potential weight distribution. A pilot explains it like this. If you move some seats without asking them, you might cause an imbalance on the plane. If you ask the flight attendants if you want to change seats, they'll let you do it after takeoff. I mean, people get up and move in the plane all the time, so this isn't like you can't change your position at all, but it can be dangerous to do so without confirmation. Here's a fun fact. The black box, as its nickname, is not black. It's bright orange. Flight Data Recorder is its official name, and it's orange so that in case of an accident, the rescue team can spot it easily. Where do you think is the dirtiest place on the aircraft? Not toilets, not seat holders, it's table trays. There are more. The cozy blankets you ask for from the flight attendants aren't so clean either. According to a report, some airlines wash their blankets only once a month. Now that you know the tricks, you can plan your trip at a perfect price and maybe bring your own blanket to the plane. Sit back and enjoy the flight. Good things come to those who wait.
Hey, summer's coming. Here's our Brightside approved checklist of stuff you gotta take with you, plus some tips for you to be fully prepared for your vacation. No matter how hard we try, we sometimes tend to overpack. Who, me? Now, remember one thing, the bigger your suitcase is, the more you will try to cram into it. Next time you pack your stuff, try to stick to a 5-4-3-2-1 rule. This rule says that for a 1-week vacation, we can easily limit to 5 pairs of socks and underwear, 4 tops, 3 bottoms, 2 pairs of shoes, selected by how active you're planning to be on your vacation, and 1 hat. But I suggest we add one more item to this rule: A light-wear rain jacket, like this one. It takes no more space than 2 pairs of socks, but it can be a lifesaver for unpredictable weather conditions. If you're afraid your clothes will get dirty fast and you'll have to hide those ketchup stains on your vacay photos, there's a solution on how not to do it. Have you heard of on-the-go detergent? These are small packets you can throw in your suitcase and hand wash your clothes in the sink. Binder clips may seem to have nothing to do with vacations. After all, these are office essentials. But let me try to bring you over. They have a ton of applications. Use them to hang up wet clothes, hold broken luggage straps together, you name it. If you still prefer to ignore the 5-4-3-2-1 rule and you're struggling to cram a couple more sweatshirts into your suitcase or backpack, plastic bottles are going to help you out. Grab one and cut it in 2 halves. Next, you're going to need an elastic band. Then roll the sweatshirt you need in a very tight roll and put it in between the 2 bottle halves. Secure this weird construction with an elastic band and voila! It now takes up way less space in your luggage. But if you're not into DIY solutions, here's another option: packing cubes to organize clothes. They'll keep all your stuff well organized and you'll easily find what you need without digging through your entire suitcase. Plus, they come in a variety of colors and sizes, so you can separate your clothing by type or color. Well, isn't that neat? Staying connected is essential when traveling, and a portable phone charger can help ensure that your phone stays charged even when you're on the go. Look for a charger with multiple ports so that you can charge your phone and other devices at the same time. Just a quick tip here: many devices are now switching to Type-C cables, so make sure all your devices are compatible with your portable charger. If you're a frequent traveler, here's a piece of advice for you. Never ever unpack your toiletries. This way you won't forget anything next time you fly. The best solution is to keep a separate kit with all the products you need, like a contact lens case or a toothbrush. But if you still don't have one, it's high time you made up your goodie bag with your essentials. You probably already have small bottles at home. Make sure it has an inscription on them claiming the bottles are not over 3.4 ounces if you plan to take them on board. However, if you have no bottles, there are plenty of them online, like this one. The kit you want to buy should have funnels to pour any shampoo or gel easily. Some of the kits even have scoops, which is great. You can do ice cream. Nah, sorry. They help portion out a small amount of moisturizer so you won't spoil the entire jar with your finger grease. However, there are a couple of things you better keep in your pockets and not in the toiletry kit, like hand sanitizer and lip balm. While everything's pretty clear with hand sanitizer, lip balm has way more uses than you can imagine. If you have dry cuticles, lip balm will make them soft and pliable again. If you want to clean up your makeup, lip balm and a Q-tip will work wonders, unless it's minty. You can even use it instead of eyebrow gel if you left yours at home, and it can also help tame flyaway hairs. Traveling can be uncomfortable, especially when trying to sleep on a plane or in a car. A compact travel pillow can make a big difference in your comfort level and help you arrive at your destination feeling refreshed. Keeping your belongings safe while traveling is essential, and TSA-approved travel locks can help. These locks can be opened by TSA agents without damaging your luggage, making them a great option for air travel. The world is very diverse, and so are plugs. If you're traveling to a new and faraway destination, don't forget to check what kind of plugs they have there. For example, if you're traveling to the UK, you can stick to this adapter. A small spray bottle can significantly upgrade your look. Yes, it can. For example, if your favorite t-shirt tends to wrinkle a lot, you can sorta iron it with a spray bottle. Hang it up and spray it with water. The wrinkles will disappear, and your t-shirt will look fresh and presentable, hopefully. Now let's talk duct tape. Duct tape in your luggage may be pretty stress-relieving. Now picture it. You're going back home with a whole bunch of gifts you bought for your family and friends. Whoops! The zipper on your suitcase just didn't resist the pressure, and it busted. Duct tape is coming to the rescue. Yeah, a suitcase wrapped in duct tape might look somewhat funny, but it's still better than shelling out a pretty penny on a brand new suitcase you weren't planning to buy. Yeah, that does make sense. Laundry bags may come in handy when you separate your dirty clothes from your clean ones. I know, you can do that with plastic bags, but laundry bags are sort of more eco-friendly. Plus, once you come home, they'll spare you some time. You won't need to dig through your suitcase trying to find all the clothes you want to wash. You'll just need to throw the laundry bag into the washing machine. If you're traveling to the seaside, you might want to consider grabbing a quick dry towel like this one. They're usually made of microfiber that dries much quicker than regular cotton. Plus, these guys are pretty low maintenance, as they can be machine washed at up to 130 degrees Fahrenheit. Next on, dryer sheets. You know, we all sweat, and our feet sweat too, especially if we walk miles and miles exploring a new location. So, when you return to the hotel and take your sneakers off, just put a dryer sheet in each sneaker. It'll absorb the odor, and your sneakers will be ready for more adventures. English is surely an international language, but you may still get into a situation where no one speaks English and you don't have an internet connection to Google Translate what you want to say. To play it safe, create a set of flashcards with essential vocabulary to help you out in basic situations. A favorite snack may be one of the most commonly forgotten by travelers' items. Yeah, they do give you food on the plane, but sometimes you may want to have an alternative. Plus, your snack can even save your budget in case you have a long connection. The prices in the airport lounge are crazy. Even if you travel in summer, it doesn't mean you don't need any warm clothes. Make sure you have a zip hoodie or something of that kind, especially on board. Thing is, you never know if it's going to be cold or hot on the plane. Sometimes it gets pretty stuffy in there, but it can also be freezing cold. Airplane blankets, as well as tray tables, are swarming with germs, so it's better to have your own clothes to keep warm. As for tray tables, I doubt you can bring your own on board, so just don't forget to clean them with an antibacterial wet wipe. And have a safe flight. Now, flight attendants are trained to notice some pretty important things about each passenger once they board the plane. Curious about what these are? Well, first and foremost, flight attendants are all about safety. So if you're following the rules and paying attention during the safety demo, you're already off to a great start in their book. But don't worry, they're not just looking for rule followers. They also want to make sure you're comfortable and have everything you need to enjoy your flight. One thing they notice right away is how much luggage you're carrying. If you're struggling to lift a heavy bag into the overhead bin, they'll probably step in and help you out. And if you're one of those people who insists on bringing a massive carry-on that barely fits in the bin, they might discreetly check to make sure you're not breaking any weight or size limits. Speaking of luggage, flight attendants can tell a lot about you from your suitcase. If it's covered in stickers from exotic locations, they might assume you're a seasoned traveler who knows their way around an airport. But if it's a beat-up old bag with duct tape holding it together, they might wonder if you're a first-time flyer or just someone who doesn't care much about appearances. Of course, one of the most important things flight attendants notice about you is how you treat them and your fellow passengers. If you're friendly, polite, and respectful, they'll go out of their way to make your flight as pleasant as possible. But if you're rude, demanding, and throw a tantrum when things don't go your way, they might not be as eager to help you out. And then some. They'll always take a sneak peek at what's on your feet, too. It's not because they're all secretly obsessed with shoes, it's actually for your safety. They check out your sneakers to see if you can quickly and easily run in case of an emergency. If you're planning to board a flight, you might want to think twice before rocking those high heels, unless you want to hear an emergency command to kick them off. Speaking of emergencies, flight attendants also like to look at whether you're a fit person or not. They do this just in case they need some physical assistance in the event of some bad, unwanted thing happening. And hey, if you happen to be a doctor, don't be shy about letting the crew know. You might just be a lifesaver. Now, let's talk about food and drinks, my favorite topic. Flight attendants are always happy to serve you, but they also notice what you order. If you ask for something that's not on the menu or request a complicated custom drink, they might raise an eyebrow. But if you order something simple and easy to prepare, like a glass of water or a bag of pretzels, they'll be more than happy to oblige. If you're planning to fly with your furry friend, make sure to prepare it for some attention from the flight attendants. Don't worry, they're just curious about your cute companion. And if your pet is a trained service animal and registered with the airline beforehand, they're good to go. Also, if you've paid for your pet to fly, make sure they stay cozy in their carrier for the entire trip. Flight attendants are also trained to notice any unusual behavior or potential red flags. If someone seems nervous or anxious, they'll keep an eye on them to make sure they're okay. Luckily, some flight attendants are also happy to share some secrets that will make your next experience in an airplane way better. For instance, if you're wondering when's the best time to take to the skies, they may have some ideas. Some destinations, for example, have plenty of flights throughout the day. So the question is, should you go early or stay up late? Turns out that the best time is first thing in the morning. But shh, don't tell anyone, or they might steal all the morning flights. The reasoning is pretty sound, though. The weather is usually calmer in the morning, and any delays from the day before should have been sorted out overnight. Now, when it comes to holiday travel, here's another piece of advice. If you can swing it, give yourself a little wiggle room. For example, try flying on the day before the winter holiday starts, instead of the 24th itself. That way, you'll have a bit more flexibility and hopefully avoid any stress or last-minute airport drama. What can you do when it comes to delays, you might wonder? Well, they can happen at any time, unfortunately, and there's not much a flight attendant can do about it. But don't worry, flight attendants and passengers are on the same team. Also, don't believe the rumors. Flight attendants won't hide information from you. There's no point. If you're stuck on a delayed flight, don't hesitate to ask the staff for all the info you need, and rest assured they will do their best to get you on the next available flight as soon as possible. Now, what about jet lag? Surely flight attendants have the best remedies. If you're hopping across time zones, most flight attendants recommend catching a quick snooze upon arrival. But don't get too cozy. Stay up until nightfall to help your body clock adjust. After all, you don't want to be groggy when you arrive. Also, if you're only visiting a destination for a short time, airplane staff recommend sticking to your home time zone. It might just save you from the hustle of adjusting to another time zone unnecessarily. And don't forget to keep hydrated, munch on nutritious food, and get in some exercise to keep your body feeling tip-top. Now, we've all seen in movies those scenes where the main character gets a surprise upgrade to business class out of the blue. As much as we all dream of being upgraded to a luxurious seat mid-flight, it's usually only possible on the ground, unless you're one lucky duck. There's a list and a method for who gets bumped up to first class. Sometimes, flight attendants will shuffle passengers around so families can sit together, or they do it to fix any seat mix-up. But once the plane takes off, moving around is pretty rare. Ever wondered if you can switch seats with another passenger during the flight? The answer is yes, you can. Most flight attendants encourage it, especially if it means keeping families together. However, it's best to figure out any seat-swapping arrangements before boarding to avoid any chaos. Plus, some seats are fancier than others, and if people have paid extra for them, it's important to be respectful of that. Also, did you know that the emergency exit rows are sometimes marketed as premium seating? Let's talk about some serious airplane etiquette. So, who gets to claim the middle armrest? It's a big debate, but most flight attendants think the person in the middle seat deserves it. Hey, let's give them a break. They're already stuck in the least desirable spot. Now, on to the great window blind debate. Some people want them up, some people want them down. If it's a nighttime flight, keep them closed. You don't want to disturb your fellow passengers with unnecessary light. However, if you're flying over the Himalayas, you better believe people are going to peek through those windows. And let's not forget, blinds need to be open upon arrival for safety reasons. The crew needs to see outside in case of emergencies. Have you ever been curious about what flight attendants eat on board? Do they have the same food as the passengers? Turns out they can have the same meals if they want to, but they don't always choose to. Some prefer to pack their own snacks like hummus, apples, and popcorn because the airplane options don't always keep them alert. They also focus on drinking lots of water and avoiding foods that might make them feel bloated, but they do indulge in airplane coffee. Some crew members even bring their own meals on board due to dietary requirements or to add to the festive vibe on holiday flights. I once saw a passenger give a tin of holiday cookies to the flight attendants. You can bet she got some extra special attention.
The Pacific Ocean stretches for more than 12,000 miles at its widest point. The distance is so great that you could fit 5 moons within this space. And the surface of the Pacific Ocean could fit all 7 continents. It's also greater than the surface of Mars. No wonder, the largest ocean on Earth covers 30% of the planet's surface. Like us humans, most sharks need a winter vacation. In 2002, scientists discovered the White Shark Cafe. That's how they called a remote part of the Pacific Ocean between Hawaii and Baja California. Coastal great white sharks migrate there in the winter. They spend several months there. The animals don't return home until coastal waters get warmer again. During the Stone Age, the entire population of Central Europe was around 1,500 people, which means they would all fit on a mid-sized cruise liner these days. Astronomers have figured out that the Milky Way weighs around 1.5 trillion solar masses, and one solar mass is the mass of our sun. A tiny part of this weight is a supermassive black hole at the center of the galaxy, 4 million solar masses, and 200 billion stars. The rest is dark matter, mysterious and invisible. The platypus is a weird creature, a mammal, but with a duck-like bill, webbed feet, and a flat tail. Female platypuses lay eggs, and males have venomous claws on their hind legs. But the most bizarre thing, these creatures have no stomach. In other words, they don't have a special sac that produces digestive enzymes and acids. Scientists have discovered that some dinosaurs didn't roar. Instead, they produced sounds similar to a duck quacking and a pigeon cooing. One of the most mysterious sounds ever heard on Earth was the bloop. When it occurred in 1997, underwater microphones recorded it from a distance of 3,000 miles away. It resembled the noise of marine animals, but the volume was too great for a sound produced by a living creature. The bloop continued for 1 minute. It started from a low rumble and then rose in frequency. Experts claim that the smell of green apples makes rooms feel larger than they really are, and warm scents in a store, like cinnamon or vanilla, will make you spend more money than you planned. The longest mountain chain on our planet is actually underwater in the Atlantic Ocean. The mid-ocean ridge stretches for more than 40,000 miles. That's 5 times the diameter of Earth. You can't sneeze while sleeping. Your brain simply shuts down this reflex. If something like dust or animal hair triggers the need to sneeze, you have to wake up first. Luckily, you can easily fall back asleep after that. The longest TV ad ever was put together and shown in Brazil in 2018. It was made up of hundreds of short clips. The ad continued for 14 hours and even got to the Guinness World Records. It's also supposed to run online forever. If all sheets of Arctic ice and glaciers melted at the same time, the sea level would rise to the height of a 26-story building. Under black or UV light, ripening bananas look bright blue. That's because of the chlorophyll that's breaking down when the fruit is ripening. After befriending humans, dogs developed 2 muscles above their eyes that weren't there before. It helps pooches maintain better eye contact with their owners and makes their face more expressive. Those big puppy dog eyes that scream, "Adopt me!" Yep, that's the relatively new muscles in action. Because of tectonic plate movements, the Pacific Ocean shrinks by 1 inch every year. and the Atlantic Ocean gets bigger by the same amount. The gap between responses in a conversation usually lasts about 200 milliseconds. Experts say it's the smallest human response time. Sea otters have the densest fur of any animal on our planet. These creatures have more than 1 million hairs per square inch of their bodies. Plus, their fur has 2 layers. There's a shorter undercoat and a guard coat, which is longer. These 2 layers trap air twice as effectively. It prevents water from getting on the animal's skin. The water temperature doesn't usually rise above 35 to 40 degrees Fahrenheit in the deepest parts of the ocean, unless you get close to a hydrothermal vent. The water released by such vents can be heated up to 750 degrees Fahrenheit. Only immense pressure at the ocean floor keeps it from boiling. The Empire State Building's tower was designed to serve as a docking station for dirigibles. At that time, people believed these airships would become the main means of transportation in the future. The project included gangplanks, check-in and customs offices, and so on. But then, the engineers realized the wind up there was too strong for their plans, so they gave up on their idea. These days, there are only 2 ice sheets in the world left after the planet's last ice age. The first is the Greenland ice sheet. The second, the Antarctic ice sheet, is enormous. Clocking in at more than 5 million square miles, it's the size of Mexico and the continental US combined. Angel Falls, the largest uninterrupted waterfall on the planet, is more than twice as tall as the Empire State Building. During the dry season, the falling water sometimes evaporates before it reaches the ground. Tsunami waves often go unnoticed. They don't rise for more than several inches above the surface until they reach shallow waters. When the ocean is deep, though, these stealthy waves can travel at a speed of 500 miles per hour. That's as fast as a long-distance passenger airplane. Actors' brains work differently every time they're in character. Psychologists say it looks as if they're suppressing their own personalities while acting. It's as if their characters possess them. Corals that live in shallow waters produce their own protection from the sun. Without it, sunlight would harm the algae living inside them. To protect these algae, which are the main sources of food for the corals, they fluoresce. This process makes proteins that act like sunscreen. Facebook was once experimenting with artificial intelligence and created 2 AI chatbots. They could talk to each other, but the experiment had to be shut down. The bots started to communicate in a language no one but them understood. Experts have a better explanation than a robot uprising, though. They're sure the networks were just trying to improve the human language to interact more effectively. The Milky Way galaxy, which is our home galaxy, is more than 100,000 light-years across, and 1 light-year is the distance light travels in a year, moving at a speed of more than 186,000 miles per second. Almost 90% of all the volcanic activity on Earth happens in the oceans. The South Pacific has the largest concentration of volcanoes people know about. There's one volcano cluster that has 1,133 volcanic cones. All of them are active and cooped up in an area the size of New York State. When you arrive at a new place while traveling, your brain can't relax. It's called the first night effect. One side of your brain remains alert, because what if there's some danger lurking in this new environment? It's usually the left side of the brain that's more awake when you spend your first night in an unfamiliar place. Scientists believe the way people speak was once changed by our diets. When our ancestors started to eat softer foods, like vegetables and grains, their teeth and jaws changed. That's why people started to use softer sounds, like V and F. The Jemchug Canyon in the middle of the Bering Sea is the largest underwater canyon ever discovered, and it's 2,500 feet deeper than the Grand Canyon. When you lose weight, your fat cells don't disappear, they just become smaller. But when you put on some extra pounds, your fat cells grow both in size and in number. One mouse species living in the forests of Central America can boast an incredible musical repertoire. These tiny creatures reply to each other with the help of almost 100 notes. When you snap your fingers, it's not your thumb that produces the sound. What you hear is your middle finger hitting against your palm. Cows don't like it when they have to stay away from their best friends. These animals have strong social bonds and make BFFs. When their close friends are away, cows even show physical symptoms of stress. There are more treasures and artifacts at the bottom of the ocean than in all museums in the world combined. Bug sprays don't actually repel mosquitoes. They just mask your smell and create a barrier so that bugs can't detect the carbon dioxide and lactic acid they're attracted to.
Let me continue my world tour, and now we're heading straight to Europe. Let's start our journey in Greece, a place with thousands of years of history. Even in modern days, there are still ancient ruins there that are being carefully preserved, and it's an interesting ride. The airport of Athens has a built-in museum with ancient artifacts. And here's how ancient and modern coexist there. Here's the view of the Acropolis from the street. A Spartan roaming the streets of Greece. A Redditor shared a photo of a modern building built right over the ancient ruins. The visitors can see the ruins through the glass. Greece is also very well known for its cats roaming the streets everywhere. This Redditor spotted a cat guarding the National Bank of Greece. These days, everyone is trying to reduce the usage of plastic. Some use paper straws and some go with glass straws. But this cafe in Greece offered to use macaroni as straws. I'm not sure if it's stupid or genius. Another user went to a restaurant in North Macedonia and got baffled when they served slices of pizza on waffles. Double win, a snack and no waste. In Romania, vending machines seem to be a thing. This one, for example, is a machine with ham. And here's a better one, a vending machine selling cartons of eggs. Scrambled eggs, probably. Europe is a place where old neighbors are modern, and this combination is mesmerizing. I'll show you. This Redditor shared a photo of a modern basketball court squeezed between 700-year-old walls in Croatia. And here's a photo from inside a grocery store. Look at these old columns. Modern problems require modern solutions. These traffic lights light up the ground so that people who store their phones could notice when the light changes. Italy is a work of art with thousands of years of history. I have quite a bunch of stuff for you from there. Some ruins date back thousands of years, and a lot of that gets preserved. A Redditor shared a photo of a lobby of a hotel that has a glass floor so that the ruins were visible. And these are the railing in an Airbnb. Even street signs are a work of art in Italy. Look at this one. Another Redditor shared even more designs. This Redditor showed a photo of a supermarket that is located in an old theater in Venice. Another user added one more photo of that supermarket. Since we're talking about supermarkets, apparently, pets are allowed there. There are even special carts to carry them. Cities are centuries old, and there are quite a few narrow streets, so post vehicles have to adjust to fit them. Here's one of them. Some cities have canals or are located on islands, so boats are a thing. This is a UPS boat at Murano Island. Europe is packed with countries. The city of Basel in Switzerland is located right on the border with France and Germany, so the airport has 3 exits. You can walk out of it to France, Germany, or Switzerland. Let's walk out in Germany. Look, there's a traffic light with a girl walking a camel. The reasons are a mystery to me because camels aren't really a German thing, but it's cute. Here's another unique streetlight featuring Karl Marx, a famous German philosopher. Back to baffling vending machines. In Germany, you can find vending machines with sausages. Hamburg is Germany's major port city. There's a river that connects it to the North Sea. No wonder there's a drive-through McDonald's for a boat. Look at this design of mineral water that is being sold in the Swiss Alps. A Redditor brought a souvenir from France. These are baguette-shaped pens. Look at this narrow house in Spain. I wonder what it looks like inside, but unfortunately, the Redditor only shared the exterior. In Portugal, cell phone towers are disguised as trees. And this is a bus that can ride the roads and then turn into a boat. A Redditor spotted doors in London that have doorknobs in the center. This seems super inconvenient, but apparently the handle doesn't turn and exists only to pull the door closed. And the metal part with the keyhole has a little handle on the bottom of it. Europe is a historical place. This post box bears the mark of a king ruling over a century ago. Back in the day, red telephone boxes were in high demand. Nowadays, when every person has a cell phone or two, not so much. So telephone boxes are being used in different ways. This one, for example, is now a smartphone repair shop. Luxembourg is a small but rich country squeezed between France, Germany, and Belgium, and they have baguette vending machines. Let's move north first, to the Netherlands. Farmers border their fields with a strip of flowers and put up a sign with a QR code, where people can pay for picking the flowers. And here's just a weird installation spotted by some Redditor. In Denmark, in Aarhus, a city founded by the Vikings in the 8th century, you can find traffic lights with Vikings pictured on them. Some trash cans in Swedish subways have a separate space for cans. Homeless people can pick them up and exchange the cans for some cash. There's a giant statue of a silver moose in Norway. And these are signs on bathroom stalls depicting reindeer. Apparently, Finnish people are as polite as Canadians. On the bus, they have a button to thank the bus driver. Also, a Redditor spotted a raccoon pattern on a bus seat. We all know rocking horses. Most of you probably had one in your early days. Well, Finnish little people have rocking moose. Many people come to Iceland hoping to see the northern lights. A Redditor had a phone in the hotel which had a special button to wake the guest up when the northern lights appear. Lithuanians sometimes put fake police cars on the sides of the road to combat road speeding. Europe has been ruled by kings and queens for centuries. Even today, many countries like the UK, the Netherlands, Spain, Denmark, Belgium, and some other countries have monarchs. So, no wonder that there are hundreds of castles scattered across Europe. Poland doesn't have any monarchs these days, but it still has 500 castles. Here's a warning sign for ghosts next to one of them. In Wrocław, all landmarks have a model so that visually impaired people could touch and see them too. There's also a statue of Darth Vader in one Polish city. In reality, it's a statue of a Polish magnate who supervised the construction of a port. But from time to time, locals dress the statue in Lord Vader's costume. This sign in Poland specifically prohibits bikes, tractors, and horses to go on a highway. In some places, there's a separate line on the sidewalk for people who are walking and staring at their phones. And now we travel across the Atlantic to Africa. This is Dune 7 in Namibia, the 7th biggest dune in the world. It's as tall as the Empire State Building. An internet user shared this photo. Someone in Tanzania put a literal penthouse on top of the building. I did some research and found out that it's a hotel. Still doesn't explain the roof, but I'm totally buying it. Maybe it's marketing. Drivers in Mozambique should be careful and watch out for elephants. And this is a sign from South Africa. Watch out for penguins. And another one that asks to baboon-proof the trash bins. So baboons are the raccoons of South Africa. Trees growing through the roads aren't surprising anymore, but this is a palm tree in Morocco growing through multiple balconies. A Redditor shared a photo of a runaway horse in Israel returning to the backyard in an urban area. Urban horse encounters are relatively common in the country. A hotel in Turkey served a whole honeycomb for breakfast to this Redditor.
Hey there, quick question. What is the capital of Japan? If you said Tokyo, then you got it right. Tokyo is one of the most modern and colorful cities in Japan. But for over 1,000 years, Kyoto occupied that place. Yeah, I know, the names are similar. But while Tokyo is the futuristic center of Japan, Kyoto is one of the most traditional and historical cities in Japan. It's known as Japan's cultural capital. Let's play a game of Spot the Difference. Here are two photos. The first one is from Tokyo, and the second one is from Kyoto. Can you tell what is the main difference between both? Hold that thought for one more second. Here are two more pictures. The first one is from Asakusa, a neighborhood in Tokyo, while the second one is from Kyoto. What would you say is the main difference here? Well, you can probably guess where I'm headed. If you didn't figure it out, I'll spell it out for you. The main difference is in the colors. If you've ever had a chance to travel around a bit, you probably noticed how cities have certain color themes. Like Rome is terracotta, and Paris varies in tones of gray and sepia. Looking at these images, one can see that Tokyo is bright, electric, and looks even a bit chaotic. And Kyoto is monochromatic and gives the impression of being calmer and more peaceful. It's fascinating to see that what causes this distinction between both cities has to do with a certain landscape law. You see, in 2007, Kyoto passed a new law prohibiting colorful street signs. The law also wanted to standardize overall constructions to make the city look more homogeneous. Since Kyoto was Japan's capital city for such an extended period of time, it was built using traditional feng shui architecture and principles. That's why so many of the buildings have that traditional Asian shape to them, the one with the curvy ceiling, like you see in the Mulan movie. Sure, this style is very far from what modern architects are doing today. If you take a look at Tokyo, you'd see glass skyscrapers rather than these old buildings. But that's all part of a bigger plan, set in motion by something called the Miyako Landscape Guidelines. The municipality's main argument to pass the law was that Kyoto was losing its unique landscape due to Japan's modernization. If Kyoto were to follow in Japan's footsteps and build humongous skyscrapers, citizens would lose their view of the three mountains that surround the city. And let's face it, nobody would want that to happen. Plus, it's nice that you can go to different cities in Japan and notice that they are unique in their own way. If the landscape law was to be effective in all of Japan, we wouldn't get to see architectural marvels such as the Tokyo Sky Tree and the Asahi Flame Building. Now take a look at the Akihabara district in Tokyo. It is known as one of Japan's most modern neighborhoods. It's filled with top-notch technology at every corner. And yes, it's also filled with signs everywhere. If we compare it with Kyoto after the passing of the new law, the first thing that would have to go are the rooftop signs. Oh, and flashing and moving lights are also illegal there now. This Kyoto Starbucks also illustrates what I'm talking about. If you were strolling along the bucolic streets of Kyoto's countryside, searching for a place to get a cappuccino, you'd miss this coffee shop completely. I think we can agree that the traditional Starbucks logo was made to call attention, with that crowned siren-like creature supported by a very green background. In other places in Japan, it still looks like this. But in Kyoto, the brand went above and beyond to respect the new guidelines and produced this beautiful wooden logo and a little plaque that says this building has lattes. Yes, indeed. There are multiple examples like this. In Kyoto, the 7-Eleven doesn't have its traditional red, orange, and green stripes. Its logo was changed to black and white. You can think that's dull, but I think we can agree to disagree. It looks perfect when you look at its surroundings. Oh, and what about McDonald's, the world's most famous burger franchise? It kept its yellow logo, but took the red out of the background. In terms of the color palette allowed, the law uses the Munsell color system to determine which chroma levels are acceptable. Usually, the faded version of strong colors like red, black, green, and so on are accepted. Now, imagine if they adopted a Wes Anderson palette. It would look like a toy city, that's for sure. At first, vendors and shopkeepers felt disturbed by the new law. They didn't understand why they had to change their branding for the sake of some aesthetic the city was trying to preserve. But with time, They not only came to terms with the new law, but could already see the benefits of it for their brand success. You see, this helped turn Kyoto into an even bigger tourist attraction. Tourists felt like they were traveling in time, sort of. Some tourists even like to dress up in traditional kimonos and walk around like geishas. The municipality also began an award system to compensate the shops and brands that had done their homework well. Of course, the camouflage Starbucks won an award back in 2018, as did Sagawa, a major delivery company in Japan, back in 2012. It's not only shops that needed to adjust to the new guidelines. Things such as vending machines and post offices also needed to be toned down. Again, the idea is to make the city more visually coherent, and they sure help. Now, what happens if you don't follow the rules? Well, the people who chose to ignore the landscape law can spend up to 1 year in jail or pay a huge fine. We can also compare the differences inside Kyoto itself. Around the city center, the landscape law is less strict, so you'll find taller buildings and even bigger and more colorful signs. But as you leave the center and move towards smaller cities in the countryside, the law is much more strict. It's especially strict around the UNESCO heritage sites. In case you're not aware, there are 17 heritage sites in Kyoto. Yep, that's a lot. But that's what makes Kyoto so unique. Now, welcome to the neighborhood of Pontolcho. This neighborhood is a good example of how the landscape law changed the city's mood over the years. Pontolcho is a cute alleyway in Kyoto that spans over several blocks. If you look at this Google Street image from 2009 and this one from 2023, you'll see clear differences. For starters, the huge sign at the entrance of the alleyway is gone, and so are the wires hanging from the tops of the shops. The pavement was redone and the big store signs disappeared. It's much cleaner. At night, the alleyway turned into the perfect spot for atmospheric dining, since its legislation decided to rule over the type of lighting allowed in the neighborhood. This is what it looks like at nighttime. Hey, you fancy grabbing some sushi? I can't help thinking that this landscape law contributed a lot to Japan's minimalist architecture. Although images like these ones in Tokyo are far from the idea we have of this minimalist aesthetic, Kyoto falls right into place with it. How about we take a quick look inside one of these establishments? The Starbucks we mentioned earlier also invested in turning its interior design local. It's the first ever Starbucks where you can drink tea on a tatami floor. You can sit cross-legged, like many Japanese people do, and enjoy a delicious hot beverage. I must say I quite like the new Kyoto. How about you?
Turbulence is caused by sudden shifts in the airflow and is nothing to be afraid of. But if that simple knowledge doesn't help you, try this visualization from a pilot. Put a small piece of napkin inside a pot of jelly. The napkin is the plane, and it's surrounded by by air pressure. If you tap the jelly, the napkin will not fall anywhere. It just starts slightly moving within the jelly. Once the plane gets to its cruising altitude, it seems like the engine noise disappears altogether. No worries there, the engine is still working fine. It becomes way quieter than on takeoff because there's less thrust generated at this point. The air gets thinner, and the plane needs less power to maintain its altitude. If the pilots leave the engines at their climb setting, you'd be traveling beyond the speed of sound, and that isn't a part of the plan. That small hole you see on the back of airplane tails is part of the auxiliary power unit. It's there to produce power for an airplane's electrical systems, including lights, navigation controls, heating, and AC. The power unit is activated when a plane is on the runway. It doesn't provide complete power to airplanes. Once the airplane engines are turned on, the unit is disabled. It's only reactivated when the airplane lands at its destination. The turbines are located under the wings, since this makes it cheaper, faster, and easier to service the engines. They used to be placed in the tail, but it required expensive equipment and much more time to repair. When they started installing the engines below the wings, ticket prices went down. When seated in the exit row on most planes, you need to pull the window blind up, not down, to close it, unlike in all other seats. It's designed so for safety reasons. The overwing exit is there to help people quickly leave the plane in case of an emergency. Some of those exit window doors stay attached to the plane, others come away from the fuselage, but they all have an emergency handle at the top of the panel. You wouldn't be able to open the exit without it. There's another handle on the outside of the plane. Rescuers use it to open the door from their side. Because of this handle, there's no room for the blind to retract above the window. But there's more than enough room for it below the window. Makes sense to me now. You can actually raise the right armrest when in the aisle seat. The lock is on the underside of the armrest. It's not a button, but a lever close to the back of the seat. You can pull it to let the other passengers pass to their seats. The same tip works for the left armrest of the window seat. You can lift it up to lean on the window. Don't forget to lower the armrest during takeoff and landing for safety reasons. Planes usually use a small, powerful tug on airport grounds when they need to pull back out of their parking spot. But it doesn't mean they can't move backwards on their own. To do so, they need to use reverse thrust, and the powerful air current from it can pull some debris into the engine or cause damage to ground vehicles, the gate, or the ground crew. It would also use a lot of fuel and be incredibly loud. Plus, the pilots don't have rear-view mirrors like drivers, so they can't see behind them. Now you understand why this risky process is banned at airports. They make plane wings smooth to let air flow easily around their surface and reduce resistance during the flight. Those convex, yellow hooks, though, don't they worsen the aerodynamics? True, but they are necessary for your safety. Imagine a plane making an emergency landing in the open sea. The aircraft is sliding on the water. Then, rescue boats arrive to evacuate the passengers. Before the door opens, the escape slide inflates. Passengers need to walk on the wing and move down the slide, but the wing surface is slippery because of water. To prevent anyone from falling, the stewards install a rescue rope. They attach one end to the door and the other to the edge of the wing, passing it through these hooks. During the evacuation, people hold on to this cable like a railing. They can also attach rescue boats to the wing with a rope and these hooks, so the sea won't take people far away from the plane. When flight attendants pass through the cabin during the flight, they always touch the upper shelves above the seats. No, they don't check if the luggage compartments are closed. There are hidden handles along the bottom of these compartments. Flight attendants hold on to them not to fall. It's a pretty convenient thing since they don't have to touch the seats and disturb passengers once they're moving around the cabin. Have you ever noticed the flashing light in the cabin before takeoff? It's 100% safe. It occurs when the pilot disconnects a plane from the airport power supply and switches to the onboard one. This rapid transition may cause flashing. Passengers always board from the left side. That's because the captain sits on that side of the cabin. It's easier for him to align the plane with the terminal jet bridge this way. Also, the aircraft is fueled and loaded with baggage on the right side. With passengers boarding from the left side, the crew can do their job undisturbed. You might have noticed black triangles on the wall above the seats. For you, as a passenger, they may indicate the seats that have the best view of the wings, where you can take the most beautiful flight photos. But the triangles aren't there for this reason, of course. The crew members monitor the condition of the aircraft through windows under these signs. In case the wings freeze, the engine catches fire, or the pilot receives a signal something's wrong, the crew will quickly move to the triangles and assess the situation. Those mysterious chimes you hear during the flight are a kind of secret language the crew uses to communicate with each other. The chime you hear shortly after takeoff informs the crew that the landing gear is getting retracted. A single chime during the flight is a sign that one of the passengers needs the assistance of the crew. When they're serving meals and run out of food or drinks, they can ask their colleagues to share using a high and low chime combo. 3 low tones mean serious turbulence is approaching, so the crew needs to buckle up. A seatbelt on an airplane has a slightly different purpose from that in your car. The one in the vehicle protects you from a horizontal hit. When a plane is going through turbulence, it's shaking up and down. Your waist belt keeps you from hitting the ceiling. The tray table, the seatbelt buckle, and the toilet door handle. Those are some major feeding grounds for bacteria. But the seat pockets aren't any cleaner. Passengers leave their used tissues or wipes in there after cleaning a runny nose or coughing. They also become a residence for other sorts of trash. Even once the trash is out, the bacteria remain in their cozy pocket home. The next passenger becomes their new prospective target. Blech. Extreme heat is one of the weather conditions that can stop a plane from flying. Airplanes fly by generating lift with their wings. The air below the wings takes the plane up. In extreme heat, the airplane can't produce that much lift. That's because hot air expands and becomes way less dense than cold air. With less lift, the plane may find it really hard to take off and fly. Electronics will unlikely respond well to extreme heat or humidity, and the AC system may fail. Smaller jets can't operate at a temperature of over 118 degrees Fahrenheit. Larger Airbus and Boeing planes perform the best below 126 degrees Fahrenheit.
Behind those huge steel doors is one of the most guarded places on Earth. It's known as Site R, or the Raven Rock Mountain Complex. You'll find it in Pennsylvania. The construction is 60 stories underground and is said to be a safe place for people in case of a natural or human-made disaster. There's not a lot of information online about this mysterious place, but what we do know is that it's equipped with 38 communication systems. It's obviously not available for visits via Google Earth, but you can catch a quick glance at the two gates that face the complex. Vatican City is one of the most famous enclaves on Earth, and it's certainly worth a visit due to its wonderful architecture and vast list of art pieces to check out. One place, however, will always be off limits for visitors: the Vatican's secret archives. They have some of the oldest and rarest books on Earth. These archives are available only to a limited number of people, and since they have been visited by a small number of people so far, they also trigger a lot of weird theories. For example, that there may be books proving there's life outside our planet. If you're fascinated by shipwrecks, you'll be interested to know that one of the largest wrecks you can see on Google Earth is on North Sentinel Island, India. It used to be called the SS Jassim. It was a Bolivian ferry that sank in the area back in 2003. The reason why people can't visit it physically isn't because of the ship itself, but because the island is home to the world's most dangerous tribe. We don't really know how many people live there, but it was estimated that between 50 to 400 people call this place home. And they really don't like tourists. No person that tried to reach them survived. Also, to protect them, their privacy, and their special status, the island is closely monitored by the Indian authorities. That's mostly because it's believed the locals don't have any immunity to modern diseases. So being in contact with foreigners might be dangerous for the tribe's people, since they've never seen the outer world. A huge pink bunny appeared seemingly out of nowhere in the Italian Coleto Fava Mountains back in 2005. Besides the locals, some people stumbled upon it online too. They were puzzled by the discovery. Unfortunately, that 200-foot-tall bunny is completely gone today. You can still find the images of it online though. The unusual object was designed by artists from Vienna. They encouraged tourists to climb, jump, or even take a nap on top of the large rabbit. The whole purpose of the project was to allow people to experience what it would be like to live as smaller creatures. The bunny didn't have any removal date at the time it was placed there and was expected to last at least until 2025. But Mother Nature had other plans. A Japanese artist decided to move back to her little home village named Nagoro. But she soon found out that most of her neighbors were moving to bigger cities. To deal with loneliness, she started putting together scarecrow-like dolls, or kakashi, and placing them all over her garden. She didn't stop there though. The artist soon began doing the same with many other places in her village, creating dolls and placing them as if they were taking part in various human activities. These dolls keep moving around too, but the woman likes to stay true to her story and insists she doesn't touch them. You can see the images of this quirky village on Google Maps. This weird portal was discovered via online maps in New Baltimore, New York. It gave people all sorts of bad dreams. With spooky-looking buildings and all sorts of blurry figures, this area soon became a source for many weird internet theories. Turns out it was nothing more than a technical issue, which resulted in those images being rendered in a distorted manner. Either way, if you look for these images on Google, you won't be able to unsee them. This cute miniature world map was created by an artist from Denmark. He continuously worked on this tedious project from 1944 until 1967, using mostly his hands and just a few tools for moving heavy rocks around. He gathered stones at the edge of the water, then recreated the map of the world on the surface of this lake. During the winter, he was able to use a sled to transport larger pieces of rock over the ice and then place them in the perfect position. Apart from the continents themselves, the map also features rivers and lakes, as well as some other famous landmarks. Care to have a look at a sea without any coasts? Search for the Sargasso Sea. You'll find it in the northern Atlantic Ocean. This weird sea is surrounded by 4 ocean currents and no dry land at all. It got its name from the seaweed that grows there, sargassum. Fingerprints on the lens of a satellite camera? You may be tricked into thinking this if you search for the Finger Maze. It's located in the city of Brighton, UK, and is a large fingerprint created in Hove Park. It also has a maze at the center. It can be really hard and time-consuming to look for wild animals on Google Earth, but the Geo browser does have a nice feature that can help if you're eager to see hippos and flamingos in their natural habitat. Try Googling animals from above and start scrolling through these images. This unique feature can take you from Kenya to Namibia and even all the way to Antarctica, where you can see emperor penguins. There are some places on Google Maps that, for specific reasons, aren't available for the online public, like the Royal Palace in Amsterdam. If you head over there via Google Earth, you'll see that everything around the Dutch Royal Palace is still visible, like the vegetation and roads, but the construction itself is blurred from all angles. That's probably because local authorities want to keep the unique views of the palace for the eyes of physical visitors only. The same goes for the Tantaco National Park in Chile. This one is a privately owned nature reserve that can only be seen on Google Maps from a distance. Once you reach a certain point, the zoom feature stops working. Some people say that since it's a nature preserve, it may be home to some endangered species, and extreme measures are taken for their protection. You know how a certain brand of fried chicken has a certain kernel on their logo? Yeah, you won't see any of these logos in high resolution on Google Maps. That's because the online map uses specific algorithms to detect people's faces and blur them out. As you can see, it's not always really that accurate. It's called Snake Island, and the Brazilian authorities prohibit people from visiting it. For good reason. You'll find the island near the city of Sao Paulo in Brazil. It's said to be home to over 4,000 snakes. Some of the most venomous types of reptiles on Earth call this place home. If that's not creepy enough, how about that some of them are so dangerous that a small drop of their venom can permanently damage the human skin? You can see the shape of the island on Google Earth, but the more you zoom in, the blurrier it becomes. Here's another cool thing you can do on Google Earth. Time travel. Well, at least sort of. You won't be able to travel back in time and tell yourself to study more for that tricky exam, but you can see certain historical images of places you like. You can check if this feature works by looking at the upper left corner of the screen. If you can see a small icon with a clock, it may allow you to scroll some years back, but you can also see how sunlight affects Earth if you turn on the sunlight feature.
Seat pockets on planes are mostly filled with in-flight magazines, a plane safety guide, and information about the airline. But they're also home to all sorts of trash, grime, and bacteria that just don't belong there. A passenger coughs into a tissue or wipes their runny nose with a handful of them, but instead of immediately getting rid of them, it gets placed into the seat back pocket. Now another passenger comes along on the very next flight, sitting in that same exact seat. With limited space around them, putting some of their belongings into the pockets leads to potentially millions of germs spreading significantly to them. It's no wonder that these seats' back pockets can get so nasty. Everybody puts their trash inside of them. Passengers often leave uneaten candy bars, diapers, apple cores, and nuts. This leaves crumbs and other matters everywhere. All of this trash is taken out before the next flight, but they're rarely ever deeply cleaned. It's all dependent on the airline itself as to how often they'll really clean the plane and wipe everything down properly. The plastic tray tables where we eat and place our things are one of, if not, the dirtiest parts of any airplane. These seatback tray tables that we use can have over 2,000 CFUs, colony-forming units of bacteria, per square inch living on their surface. The ridged texture keeps cups of soda from sliding off the table, also creating tiny mountain ranges where the microbes attach themselves. Sugary sodas and juices that spill onto tray tables throughout flights give bacteria the perfect environment to stay and feed. Bacteria love living on this plastic almost as much as human skin. And there are lots of microbes that your tray catches and holds onto, especially when they're not thoroughly cleaned. Much like air vents that are always fiddled with, seatbelt buckles are probably the most touched thing on any aircraft. The average buckle can contain nearly 1,000 colony-forming units of bacteria per square inch on it at all times. Passengers touch seatbelt buckles to go to the bathroom. Even after washing their hands, people will walk down the aisle touching all the headrests for balance to get to their seat. After settling in and buckling up, most will then touch their face, eyes, phone, and even food for the rest of the trip. Airports can be big virus spreaders, but they're cleaned constantly. The same cannot be said for the subway, buses, or even taxis. Subway door handles, luggage carts, chairs, seats, and poles are very rarely cleaned and are a breeding ground for all sorts of nasties. New York City's subway system is one of the dirtiest in the world, with a mind-boggling 2 million bacteria colonies per square inch on nearly every surface. Many of these have still yet to be identified. They're that rare. It goes with you everywhere, sometimes even into the bathroom. As a result, cell phones could be up to 10 times dirtier than any toilet seat. E. coli, the bacteria that can give stomach cramps and fevers, can live for hours on warm surfaces like phones. The best solution? Wash your hands thoroughly before touching phones, and make sure that phone gets a good wipe down with a disinfectant. Most people have a smartphone by them day and night, meaning that all the bacteria picked up during the day is transferred to them. Everyone touches the remote control at some point, but it isn't even thought of when cleaning the house. It falls to the floor or gets into the side of the sofa, a warm, dark home for mold and bacteria, where there are lots of crumbs and grime. A good clean with an antibacterial wipe every so often will help keep it shiny and germ-free. Blowing out candles on a birthday cake can expel a mist of saliva that always lands on the birthday cake frosting. This can lead to some very unhappy birthday parties if someone is sick. Sometimes it's better to skip the candles altogether, or accept the risk that every day is someone's birthday celebration, and a little bit of spit won't always hurt you. A single ATM gets touched by hundreds of people in a day. The chances that at least one of those people touching the buttons is sick and freely spreading the flu or cold is naturally quite high then. The flu, for example, can live up to 2 days on objects. It can even be days after someone has recovered from that virus that it'd still be active and spreadable. ATMs are cleaned, but not all the time. It would be impossible to service every single one in a major city daily. A single dollar bill can be home to thousands of different kinds of bacteria, including the usual suspects like E. coli, staph, and a bacterium that causes acne breakouts. Paper money can reportedly carry more germs than a household toilet, and bills are a hospitable environment for gross microbes. The smaller in value of the bill, the dirtier it will be because it's in circulation more. Money can't be cleaned like a lot of things, but taking it to a bank for new, hopefully cleaner bills is possible. Use hand sanitizer and wash your hands after handling money too, just in case. Grocery store shopping carts can have more bacteria on them than what's ever been found in public restrooms. That includes toilet seats and the flushing handles. Cleansing wipe dispensers have been appearing at many major grocery chains, and some stores even go the extra mile to clean them after the day's through. But these simply aren't enough to keep up with the petri dish that the handles are. With over 100,000 bacteria per square inch, it's nearly impossible to keep them clean. Toothbrush holders hold onto moisture and are rarely cleaned, making them one of the dirtiest things in our homes. It can be filled with salmonella, E. coli, and lots of mold over time when it's not getting cleaned regularly. Wash your toothbrush holder in hot, soapy water every week to minimize the chances of getting sick. Toothbrushes should be changed every 3 to 4 months for a very good reason. It takes a while for the toothbrush to dry. This creates the perfect home for mold and fungus to spread and grow. There can be more than 600 different kinds of bacteria living inside of your mouth. A kiss alone can transfer about 80 million bacteria from one mouth to another. A good brushing routine will have around 1,000 to 100,000 bacteria living on each tooth's surface. But for those that don't brush, bacteria can be up to 100 million or 1 billion bacteria on each tooth. The dirtiest thing in our home can only be one thing: the kitchen sponge. It's wet, absorbent, and food and dirt are rubbed into it all the time. Then we wipe down our kitchen tops just to spread all that grubbiness around some more. Sponges are very hard to keep clean. The best way to keep things sanitary is to replace it when it starts to smell bad. It's no surprise that if the sponges are filthy, then sinks are too. Rinsed fruit, vegetables, prepared raw meat, and dishes needing cleaning all make their way to the kitchen sink. This creates an extremely high breeding ground for E. coli, salmonella, and many other gross things. They'll stick to the sides and drain holes and grow like crazy. Clean sinks before and after each use, and make sure to keep them as dry as possible to prevent any mold growth as well. Restaurant menus and condiment dispensers aren't cleaned nearly as often as they should be. If someone with a cold was using the condiments right before you, this greatly increases the chance of the cold-causing bacteria being on your hands and then your fries. Menus are rarely washed with disinfectants after each use. Customers have been touching quite a few things like chairs, tables, their faces, or hair before they give the menus back. Dog toys need to be cleaned regularly to prevent any bacteria or mold growth from spreading too much. Each time a dog slobbers on a toy, they don't just transfer their mouth bacteria. They've created a sticky, wet place for other germs to live on. There's no way of telling just what their favorite plaything has picked up around the house or yard. Purses and bags could have more bacteria than we really considered. They're regularly placed on dirty floors, bathroom floors, countertops, and out on the street. This exposes them to all sorts of germs, like salmonella, E. coli, mold, and fungus, all the time. Alcohol wipes are very good to carry around in your purse or bag to give them a good wipe down when needed. Drinking fountains are a cesspool of bacteria and germs. Over 2 million bacteria per square inch can be found on the fountain's faucets alone. As they get wet and touched by hundreds of hands, the bacteria and mold begin to grow. If someone has coughed or sneezed near it recently, those particles will cling onto the water. This creates a higher chance of the next person drinking from it catching something.
Check around the corner, under the bed. Wait, what's that hiding over there? Hotels are supposed to be your home away from home, but do you know what secrets they're keeping? Here's what no staff member or manager would ever tell you. Some hotel owners are very superstitious of the number 13, or they know guests might be. Whatever the case, you may find room 13 or the entire 13th floor completely missing. In the Far East, the same can be said about the number 4. You can easily get an upgraded room without any additional charge if you have a birthday, anniversary, or wedding. Just call ahead of time and warn them about the upcoming event. You might be checking that bed for stains and bugs, but you're probably overlooking the dirtiest thing in the room, the TV remote. It doesn't get disinfected between guests. Put it in a plastic sandwich baggie before using it. Plenty of other filthy things in that room, but we'll touch on those later. Every hotel has a place where housekeeping stores forgotten things. The most frequently lost items are phone chargers, but more interesting discoveries have been found. False teeth, glass eyes, and even boxes of worms. If no one comes for these strange treasures after 5 or 10 years, yes, they're nice enough to wait. The cleaners raffle the lost items among themselves. Some luxury ones may have hidden cameras built in for safety reasons. The most common place for this is the door peepholes. So always put a piece of masking tape or putty over the one in your room. But hidden cameras in the room itself are never okay. To check the place, turn off the overhead light and switch on your phone's front-facing camera. Slowly scan the room. Your front camera will pick up their infrared light. Common spots are near the bed and in the bathroom, so check those areas thoroughly. Hotel owners often let their friends and family stay for free. You wouldn't know it since they usually leave before peak season starts. The employees and cleaners also get in on some perks. They keep towels, slippers, bathrobes, and shampoos. But what you might not know is that hotel chains are fine with you taking things from the room. Stationery, toiletries, coffee mugs, umbrellas, anything with their name and logo on it. This will serve as free advertisement when you take those things with you. Those beautiful bright vegetables and fruits near the hotel restaurant's entrance aren't just a decoration. They trick your body into feeling full before you even get your plate. You eat less, and the company saves money. They may give you extra bottles of shower gel or other toiletries, but there are ones that charge you for grabbing too much food during the breakfast buffet. To avoid upsetting the cooks with the amount of discarded food, some hotels in certain countries make their guests pay for anything left uneaten on the plate. No hotel chain would willingly tell you how to get the biggest discount for your stay. So if you have a limited budget, make a reservation after 6 p.m. This is when the sales department tries to sell all canceled reservations at the last minute. That often means cutting the price down, sometimes in half. The first Sunday of the month is the best time to check in. Vacationers are leaving, business travelers haven't arrived yet, so most of the best rooms will be available. To get the top pick, use a special service called rooming. You can view everything in the hotel and choose which room you like the most. Just ask the receptionist about it. They won't willingly speak up about other free services unless you ask. Free phone chargers, hair irons, bottled water, and board games are among them. They can also order a transfer for you, book concert or theater tickets, and wake you up at a specified time. Hotels can refuse you at check-in, even if you've paid for a booking in advance. They can cancel your reservation if you don't show up before 6 p.m. If something's holding you up on your way, call and let them know in advance. Even if you arrive on time, you can still be denied a room. It usually happens when the hotel is overbooked. In that case, they might redirect you to a different one. Even more surprising, the chances of this happening depend on who you are. Young single men, couples, and groups of friends will usually get the boot before a family or a single older woman. It's because the first group is usually more flexible about the unexpected move. Before you pounce on that minibar, better check to see if those drinks are sealed. Hotel workers say they've had cases where guests finished all the provided beverages and then filled the bottles up with tap water to avoid paying for them. Shh, you didn't hear it from me. Large chains often have their own special transport for meeting important guests or getting around town. Their own taxis are usually cheaper than city ones. So if you want to save some money, check the cost of their transport at the reception. But don't ask the receptionist to recommend where you should have a meal. The hotel clerk will point you to a local place that pays them for the recommendations, even if it's overpriced and tasteless there. Guests don't really pay for the room itself, but for the hotel's location. Proximity to the airport, the beach, downtown, and famous sites will cost you an additional amount. Yes, even if it doesn't have any stars at all, and the conditions inside aren't great. Think twice before handing over your keys for valet parking. There have been cases when hotel workers took an expensive car for a joyride and even filmed it. My car? No. A famous person could be staying in the room right next to you. Nobody would know it, since they get to use made-up names to conceal their identity. For the rest of us common folk, that's not allowed. You requested a single room with a big bed and a nice view of the beach. What you got? A room with 2 small beds and a lovely view of a brick wall. It happens all the time. But they're supposed to give you compensation or some free service to make up for the difference. Know your right to this if the manager doesn't offer. The safe in your room can be anything but safe. If you have some valuables, ask the receptionist to put them in the main hotel safe up front. This place is usually much more secure since all the staff doesn't have access to it. Although hotel chairs and sofas look clean, Wait till you see one under a microscope. Don't sit on them without first laying down a towel or blanket. You don't know if the guest before you had their feet up on the furniture. And their feet would certainly be filthy since the room's carpets are rarely shampooed, maybe once a year or even less. That being said, don't walk on them barefoot. If you use slippers or keep your shoes on, make sure to put shower caps on the bottoms when you pack them into your suitcase before leaving. Same story with that bed. Before you lie down on it, know that the cleaning staff might launder the linens between guests, but not that big, beautiful, germy bedspread. Don't touch the drinking glasses either. Even if they get a wipe down, it was probably with the same cloth used to clean other surfaces. Why? Well, because staff have only 20 to 30 minutes to clean each room completely, so they need to do it quickly, not thoroughly. Things that often get overlooked: light switches, door and drawer handles, remotes. Ironically enough, it's the things that get touched most often. Experts have found that these items have as much germs on them as the toilet. Solution? Always bring plenty of antibacterial wipes. And if you ask about the hotel's cleaning practices, remember, cleaning doesn't mean disinfecting. Choose your words wisely and don't give the manager a loophole. Have you ever noticed that one of the flight attendants hides their hands behind their back when you enter the plane? Are they crossing their fingers for a safe takeoff? Nah. At this moment, they're counting the passengers as they board. They have a special little counter for this. There are lots of stories about how bad airplane food is. In fact, it's not that bad. It's your sense of taste that's on the fritz because of the dry air. It dries your mouth out of all its saliva and dulls your sense of smell, which helps to feel 80% of what you taste. So, airline companies add more spices into the food so you can feel the taste. Seatbelts are located on the stomach because of the turbulence. When that happens, the plane sort of jumps up and down. Your waist belt holds you so that you don't crash into the ceiling of the aircraft. The shoulder seat belts in the car protect against horizontal collisions. By the way, flight attendants also have shoulder seat belts. It's because they always sit facing the passengers to keep order. While all passengers are flying face forward, the cabin crew sits backward. If the plane goes forward sharply, passengers get pushed into seats, and the flight attendants are held by shoulder and waist belts. Even if lightning strikes a plane, the passengers won't feel it. The entire aircraft is covered with an aluminum layer that conducts electric current without passing it inside the plane. Good thing. And all electronics and fuel tanks are equipped with additional protection. Before any plane is released from the factory, all this protection is tested by simulating lightning. Many passengers get a headache during the flight, especially right after takeoff. This happens because you're getting up to an altitude higher than Mount Everest in about 10 minutes. The air up there is thin. Your brain gets less oxygen. By the way, chewing gum or candies can help. Now, the main reason why the seats on the plane are so uncomfortable is profit. Airlines want to make more money, so they try to fit as many passengers on the plane as possible. Because of this, there's so little space between the seats. 2 additional rows in the cabin provide 12 new passengers. Also, companies make airplane seats lighter to spend less fuel. Seats become smaller and less comfortable. You can feel cold inside a plane, but when the plane is flying at high altitudes, the conditions resemble those in the Sahara Desert. It's all because of very low humidity. Every hour of flight, your body loses a lot of liquid. Stay hydrated, but only choose bottled water. Many companies don't show movies because they can make passengers too sad or emotional. Even if a movie doesn't have a dramatic story with incredible characters, it can still be heartbreaking for passengers. The thing is that our body experiences stress, and we take everything close to heart because of the lower oxygen levels. Also, we're sitting in seats at a high altitude and very far from home. Our brain realizes we're out of control of the situation. This feeling of helplessness can throw a person's emotions out of whack. So, companies only show positive movies and comedies. Some passengers say they feel like they can't think straight during the flight. This happens because of a lack of oxygen, so your mind isn't in top form. Well, better not do any important tasks or make any important decisions. Your corneas are the one part of your body that doesn't have a blood supply. The only way they get oxygen is from the air, so worsened eyesight and dry eyes are common problems on airplanes. The best solution here is to take with you eye drops along with gum. That worsened vision is the first reason the crew dims the lights and asks you to open the windows during nighttime takeoffs and landings. Your eyes need to be adjusted to the dimness in case of an emergency. The second reason is the plane crew needs to be able to see out the window. There's a theory that hair grows faster during the flight. Some people notice that little stubble appears on their faces after the flight, even if they shaved a few hours before they got on the plane. Anyway, this theory is not confirmed. Some say the cabin pressure, lower temperature, or even heightened stress levels can accelerate hair growth. If you experience stress and get nervous right after you step on the plane, your best solution can be a little training. Go to the gym or make a set of squats before boarding to prevent stress. Also, a good workout compensates for the hours you spend sitting still. Airlines lose and send in the wrong direction several million lost bags a year. Almost half of the lost luggage is lost because of transfer issues. They may not deliver your suitcase just because of lack of time. A plane can fly away before loaders put your luggage there. When this happens, they might carry these bags to another flight. And when your bag goes to the wrong place, it can be taken by other passengers accidentally. If you want to find your lost luggage quickly, take a photo of it in advance and then show it to the airport workers. You can also buy a special GPS tracker and put it in your suitcase. It works for 6 days, and you can use your phone to locate your luggage wherever it is. Airport staff take unclaimed luggage to a special center. If the owner doesn't show up within 3 months, the things inside the bags will be put up for sale in specialized stores. There, you can find clothes, jewelry, and electronic devices. And of course, it all comes with a big discount. The rumbling noise you hear after boarding is not my stomach. It is luggage being loaded on the plane. The compartment is right under the cabin of the aircraft, so it sounds quite loud. Aircraft tires can withstand pressure 4 to 5 times more than a plane actually gives them during landing. The metal wheel is more likely to break than the tire. Pilots also have different meals. This is necessary to reduce the risk of food poisoning. The flight can go well even if one of the pilot feels bad because of a stale burrito. If 2 pilots ate the same burritos, that could lead to problems. Oxygen masks drop down when the air pressure changes. At a certain height, there can be less air in the cabin. To prevent passengers from feeling this, they should put on oxygen masks. When pilots descend to a safe altitude, you can breathe without the mask again. By the way, masks only have oxygen for 15 minutes. This is enough for the pilots to descend to a safe altitude on which passengers can breathe. The wings of most passenger planes are located at the bottom of the plane. It's built this way because of the engine. It should be installed under low wings because it's closer to the ground and easier to repair. Another reason is that the wing should take a big part of the blow during a bad landing. And if the plane falls into the water, then the wings become a life-saving pillow. Fuel tanks installed in the wings are empty after the flight, and it helps to stay on the water too. The wings of cargo planes are located at the top to make it easy to load the cargo since the hull is located very close to the ground. Also, it helps to avoid getting debris into the engines in case when airfields aren't clean. Plus, this wing location has less aerodynamic resistance during the flight. Little triangles on the aircraft walls are special labels for flight attendants. The triangles mark special windows. You can see flashing indicators through these windows. It signals the landing gear is retracted and the flaps are closed. But for ordinary passengers, this is the place with the best view of the wings. Turbulence is a common thing during a flight. but usually it's so insignificant most passengers don't even feel it. Strong turbulence is rare. By the way, turbulence is just hot and cold air affecting a plane. For better understanding, imagine a big balloon people fly on. Remember the flamethrower installed under the ball? It heats up the air and the hot air raises the ball up. So turbulence is the hot air created by nature, and it makes the same thing with a plane that it makes with a balloon. Also, turbulence can occur if the plane gets under the hot air stream left by another plane. That little yellow hook you can see from the airplane's window if you're sitting next to the wing is there to help you in case of an emergency landing. Inflatable slides can only be deployed from the emergency exit doors in the front and the tail of the plane. In the middle, the passengers would have to walk right out on the wing and get to the ground from there. But jumping from the plane wing isn't safe because it's just too high. And here's where those little yellow hooks come in handy. The flight attendants tie ropes from the doors and through the loops for the passengers to hold onto. This way, everyone can safely get to the ground without injuries. Now, you want to try to avoid cozying up under airplane blankets. Some airlines only wash them about once a month. Better use your own travel blanket, a scarf, or a jacket. And always remember to wear your shoes while walking around the plane. That carpet on the floor can't and won't be cleaned to perfection between flights. It's just too much time and effort for the cabin crew. The dirtiest place on a plane isn't the bathroom. It's your tray table. It has 8 times more bacteria than an onboard toilet flush button. Now, in case of emergency, oxygen masks only have enough airflow to last for about 15 minutes. Luckily, it's just the amount of time a plane needs to find a suitable landing place or to at least descend to the altitude where people won't need oxygen masks anymore. You may wonder why you're asked to lift your seat back and close your tray table before takeoff and landing, but it's for your own safety. A reclined seat is comfy for you, but it makes it harder for the passenger behind you to get out of their seat, which is crucial in case of an emergency. The lower tray table is the same way, only this time it's you who won't be able to stand up fast enough if anything happens. Besides, the tray table prevents you from assuming the secure position in the event of an emergency landing. This position requires you to bend over in your seat, put your head between your knees, and cover the back of your head with your hands. Imagine doing that while your tray table is open. If you look around the cabin, you'll notice little black or red triangles around the midsection of the plane. These stickers let the flight attendants know where the airplane wings are located so they can immediately look out the right window to see if something is amiss outside. You shouldn't lower the window shades while taking off, taxiing, or landing for 2 reasons. First, the flight attendants must always be able to monitor the situation outside, and open shades help them with that, obviously. Second, if something's gone wrong on board the plane while it's on the ground, for example, a fire, the ground crews won't be able to see it and evaluate the situation before going in unless the windows are open. That tiny hole you see at the bottom of any airplane window isn't there to scare you nuts. In fact, it helps keep the pressure from the inside and the outside of the window equalized. The hole itself is only made in the second layer of glass, and there are 3 of them overall, which also helps with security, by the way. Even if the outer glass breaks, there will still be 2 more to keep you safe. Now, you might see flight attendants touching the overhead compartments while they're walking along the aisle, but that's not exactly what they do. Right beneath the compartments, there's usually a handrail that goes all the way through the cabin, so you can also use this trick to stay firmer on your feet in the aisle. The pilots dim the lights in the cabin during nighttime, not for you to get cozy and sleepy. Our eyes have a hard time adjusting to darkness in the first few minutes of sudden lights out. And in the case of emergency, every second matters. So the lights get dimmed to let you get used to darkness in case something happens and you have to act fast. Pay attention to the aisle floor too. If there's an emergency landing at night, There will be 2 luminescent strips along the aisle showing you the way to the exit. Follow them to get safely out of the plane. Flight attendants also suggest counting the seats between you and the emergency exit once you're seated. This will help you navigate in case there's no other guidance available. If a lightning bolt hits the plane, the passengers won't feel it. The entire aircraft is covered with aluminum coating that conducts electrical current and doesn't let it inside. This protection is tested using a lightning simulator. Airplane windows are round because the air pressure is evenly distributed this way. If the plane's windows were square, strong air currents would accumulate in the corners of the windows, depressurizing the cabin, and that's bad. Don't think you become untouchable if you go to the airplane toilet. The bathroom door can be opened from the outside. There's usually a small latch at the top of the door that allows cabin crew to get you out of there. It's useful for both getting to people doing something suspicious in the bathroom and helping those who don't feel well and, for example, collapsed while in the toilet. Yeah, let's avoid doing that. The plane's wings flash red and green lights at night to show the direction the plane is heading in. A green light is always on the right wing, and a red one is on the left. Aircraft tires are designed to withstand 4 to 5 times more pressure than they actually experience upon landing. The wheel is more likely to break than the tire. Pilots always have different meals. This is necessary to reduce the risk of food poisoning. The flight can still go well if one of the pilots has gone down because of a stale burrito, but not if it's both of them. And try not to both of you eat the fish. Some airlines don't allow pilots to have beards. Facial hair can prevent securely fitting the oxygen mask, and pilots must always remain conscious. The seats are blue in most aircraft because this color soothes people. It's also easy to keep clean. The rumbling noise you hear after boarding the plane is luggage being loaded on the plane. The compartment is right beneath the cabin, so it can sound quite loud sometimes. On most flights longer than 7 or 8 hours, pilots have access to a specially designed rest seat in or near the cockpit. Flight attendants typically have a section of the cabin reserved for them, and it's sometimes separated from the passenger areas. Some larger aircraft even feature private crew quarters above or below the main cabin. The wings of most passenger aircraft are located at the bottom of the plane. It's called a low wing. Firstly, if you install the engine under low wings, it'll be closer to the ground and easier to repair. Secondly, the wings will take on part of the shock in case of a hard landing. And if the plane falls into the water, then the wings become a life-saving pillow. By the way, a plane can stay afloat for 10 minutes to 60 hours. It all depends on the model of the plane, weather conditions, and pilot skills. Now, most airplanes are white because this color best reflects the sun rays and the aircraft body doesn't heat up as much. Also, the damage is best seen on white, and white paint is simply cheaper. Shoulder straps seem more secure than just a waist belt, but not in the case of planes. When the plane gets into turbulence, it's tossed a bit in the air. The waist belt will simply hold you in place in case of a more severe shake. Shoulder straps would require more space between the seats, and this is not justified on a plane. In a car, the impact is usually much stronger, so you need that shoulder strap not to whoosh through the windshield. Flight attendant seats do have passenger straps, but that's because they are much less comfortable than passenger ones. They're narrower and positioned facing the passengers. Flight attendants need extra protection simply not to fall off their seats if the plane shakes hard enough. Also, they have to help and direct people during potential evacuation, and for that, they need to be in top shape. Now maybe you've noticed that you always enter the plane from its left side. Firstly, the captain usually sits on that side. This way, it's easier for the captain to align the plane with the terminal jet bridge. Also, the aircraft is fueled and loaded with the baggage on the right side. If passengers come from the left, the crew can do their job undisturbed. Hey, we all want to get from point A to point B in the quickest, most direct path possible. Agreed? Good. But if you ever wondered why there's no direct flight from your hometown to your destination, there's a reason. When deciding on a new route, airlines have smart analysts who decide what that route will be or if it'll even happen. They got two main questions to answer: how many people want to go there, and how much money are passengers willing to pay? Depending on those two factors, airlines can make new routes and drop existing ones. Distance means fuel, and fuel means money. If they're not selling enough tickets to enough passengers going that route, out it goes. So it's not only us passengers wanting to get from A to B the fastest way possible. The airline wants to make it as efficient as it can be too, because time is money. By the way, it's always bugged me why people don't want to fly from B to A. It's always A to B. Why? B's a nice place, but you wouldn't want to live there? I don't get it. Anyway, back to the script. Whenever you're going on a road trip, you probably plan your route. You pick the best possible roads, you check how many gas stations, stores, and rest stops will be on the way. Even if you don't do that, airlines certainly do, because flying is a lot more expensive than driving. Before a flight starts, the crew makes a flight plan. The plan is uploaded to the aircraft's computer and shows the whole route from one city to another. The plane will have to stick to it most of the time, even though there's actually a whole set of routing possibilities. Because it's good to have a plan B, C, and D when you're moving a large chunk of metal through the sky with hundreds of people on board, airlines have the main route and backups to use in case of weather conditions or other possible issues. So, the people and the airline want the plane to fly the least time possible. As we know, the shortest way from A to B is a straight line. But when you look at the flight map, it's anything but a straight line. It's more of a rainbow shape across the globe. Why is that? Because showing our 3D Earth on a 2D map tricks your eye. Your plane really is flying in a straight line. Proof? If you take a string and connect, say, LA and Tokyo, you'll see it's as straight as lines get. But compare your string to the lines of latitude running across your globe. There it is, that rainbow. If we look at a live flight tracker, we can see thousands of planes flying at the same time in the same route. I mean, the whole map is covered. Look at them all. Okay, now let's take for example the US and Europe. Planes from New York, Boston, Chicago, and plenty of other cities all fly to Germany, Spain, Greece, you name it. They're all in the same air at the same time and landing in Europe by morning. Turns out, the air highway is much busier than anyone thought. Imagine it happening on a highway on the ground. So much traffic every single day. But when you're up there in the sky looking out at the clouds, it feels like your plane is all alone. All these planes use pretty much the same route because it's faster and cheaper. So how is it that thousands of aircraft, all basically on the same road, don't fly into each other? Well, the difference between the road and the sky is that the road is flat. Up there, thousands of feet above the ground, the space is 3D. So air travel takes perfect advantage of that. But you still have to coordinate all that movement, of course. Air traffic is managed by dispatchers who watch for planes and make sure they don't get closer than 3 miles to each other. Something that helps them do that is flight level regulations. All westbound flights stay at even-numbered altitudes, 34,000, 36,000 feet, you get it. All eastbound flights are at odd-numbered altitudes, 35,000 and 37,000 feet, meaning there's at least 1,000 feet between planes flying towards each other. Doesn't sound like much when we're talking altitudes of tens of thousands of feet, but that's about the height of the Empire State Building. Some parts of the air have extremely high traffic because so many planes fly there every minute. Whenever an aircraft enters one of these super busy zones, it must follow a very specific route. But even in not-so-crowded zones, there are still thousands of planes. To share the sky safely, each must follow their own route that even has a specific name. And they have plenty of help staying on the right path. There are devices on the ground called fixed navigational aids, or nav aids for short. They send radio signals in the sky that an aircraft can pick up on. You also have waypoints that are simply geographical points on Earth. They're loaded into the GPS systems, and an aircraft must follow them. An airplane's whole route is basically flying from one waypoint to another, all the way to the destination place. Now, let's go back to that global flight tracker. Something else you'll notice is that planes mostly avoid flying over the ocean and large bodies of water, the Pacific Ocean in particular. Yes, you see some here and there because people do have to get to Hawaii somehow. But in general, everyone's flying around the Pacific, not over it. That's because it's a route that's preferably avoided. Whenever there's a nice path above the ground an aircraft can follow instead, it'll go for the ground. But that doesn't make any sense because flights over water are smoother. Turbulence is caused from hot air rising from the ground. When there's no ground below you and just vast water, the source disappears and you get a less bumpy flight. Still, flying over land is safer. It just comes down to more possibilities for emergency landing on the ground rather than, well, in the middle of the ocean. And planes that take those transoceanic flights are usually the big kind with 4 engines. It'd just be too dangerous for the ones with only 2 engines. Just imagine an engine fails, and that plane would have to rely on the one other engine it has. It's possible, just best avoid it. But big ones also prefer to have a safe place to land just in case. Now, show me an airport in the Pacific Ocean. Not many of them, huh? Hence, why everyone's flying around it. Another region that planes prefer to avoid is the Himalayas. Again, doesn't mean it never happens, just better not to. The Himalayan mountains are higher than 20,000 feet, with Mount Everest reaching 29,032 feet, just to be precise. Most planes fly at about 30,000 feet, and that's just way too close for comfort. Not to mention the winds are strong there, and mountains make it difficult to maneuver the aircraft. That, and there are almost no radar services in the Himalayas, so the pilot wouldn't be able to communicate with the ground. Also, an emergency landing is only possible on a flat surface. The Himalayan region is the exact opposite of that. Add to that, there's a risk of running out of oxygen in this already dangerous area. An airplane only has enough oxygen to last 20 minutes. Plenty of time for the pilot to lower to at least 10,000 feet to a safer altitude with more oxygen. But the Himalayas make that pretty much impossible because, well, mountains, poking up all over the place. You get the picture. Back to our flight tracker map. You'll also notice hardly any planes flying over the poles, except that one up in the Arctic. Hey, what are you doing there? Ah, Dubai, Seattle. Well, it's one of the very few. This route likely got a special approval, navigation system, and a unique set of preparations. The problem here is that the poles interfere with the navigation. Compasses there go berserk and are of no use. The Earth's North Pole has a very strong magnetic field that's constantly changing. The magnetic field moves, making true north different from what pilots see on their devices. If they're just a few degrees off course, it could end up costing them dearly over long distances. That's why very few planes actually fly over the Arctic. And forget about Antarctica, nobody's flying over it. Not that you're not allowed, it's just that almost 70% of Earth's land is in the Northern Hemisphere, and nearly 90% of the world population lives up there. Hey, the more you know.
Airports are some of the most visited and, at the same time, mysterious places out there. So, let's see what's going on behind the scenes and what secrets airports hide. At some airports, there are special people called profilers. Such people bring to life a special program called SPOT, Screening Passengers by Observation Technique. They analyze your mimics, gestures, and behavior in order to detect suspicious people. Their job is to notice nonverbal signs of anxiety, people licking their lips, itching, or looking around a lot. If a profiler notices a person acting in an unusual way, they can invite them for an inspection. There, they talk to this person, trying to find out more about them and confirm, or not, their suspicions. Airport agents might also be watching you all the way from the security check to your gate. Some airports have facial recognition scanners that can easily track you. They're equipped with special software that compares passengers' faces with their IDs. Keep in mind that if you don't charge your laptop before the flight, it may be confiscated. It's not uncommon for an airport security officer to ask you to power your device up. If you fail to do it, your gadget can be taken away for an additional check. For safety reasons, it's crucial to make sure that it hasn't been tampered with or modified in a way that can cause harm during the flight. Packing an electric brush in your check-in luggage may land you in trouble. Brushes produced by some brands have lithium batteries inside, and those can potentially lead to serious problems in the air. That's why leaving your electric brush in your checked suitcase isn't an option. But you're allowed to store them in your carry-on bag. At the same time, if your device runs on AA batteries, you can put it wherever you want. Anyone who's ever traveled by plane knows about the no liquids rule, but not everybody knows that this rule also applies to peanut butter, toothpaste, creams, lotions, liquid makeup, lava lamps, snow globes, some kinds of medications, deodorant, and even gel shoe inserts. Now, let's go outside for a while and look at those landing spots. Airports charge airline companies huge fees for landing on their runways on certain days and at particular times. But the most interesting thing is that the landing spots can be bought and sold. For example, in 2016, Oman Air paid Air France around $75 million for one early morning arrival slot at London Heathrow Airport. You must have noticed that airfare has increased over the past decade. That's because of the extremely high prices of landing slots. Dispatchers don't only control the planes in the sky, as you can often see in the movies, but they also look after their movements on the ground. They also control the lighting on the runways. There's 3 types of air traffic controllers: en route, terminal, and tower. Each of these dispatchers has their own area of responsibility. One dispatcher has about 5 monitors, and the information on them is constantly changing since the monitors show weather conditions and information about other planes. You know how it sometimes goes. You come to a security checkpoint, and all of a sudden, it turns out you have something prohibited in your carry-on. But worry not, you still have a chance to save your favorite penknife. At some airports, there are on-site postal services, and you might have an opportunity to mail your belongings to any address you provide. But the mailing fees are pretty high, plus certain items are prohibited, and the postal service won't deliver them. Airports can be selling your lost luggage right now. Of course, I don't say that there's no chance for you to get back your suitcases that's traveled to a different destination, but just as likely, you might not see it again. In this case, an airport has the right to sell your misplaced belongings at an auction. Most airports have an annual lost luggage sale. After paying an entry fee, you can bid on electronics, clothes, bags, and other stuff. While flying, you might have a celebrity on board, but you won't know it. Large airports have separate check-in and security procedures for celebrities. They often board the plane directly through a hidden door located beside the jet bridge. Some airlines also use cool cars to transfer VIP passengers from the terminal building to the plane. At the same time, most people come to the airport well ahead of time. And the most popular activity while waiting for a flight is wandering through the duty-free zone. And even though people rarely plan to buy anything there, different products end up in their shopping baskets. That's because lots of airports are designed in a special way that makes people feel relaxed and at ease. I'm talking about all those huge windows, a lot of light, massage chairs, and comfortable seating areas. And statistically, calm passengers are 10% more likely to spend money on retail, duty-free, and food. Designers put a lot of thought into airport layouts. It helps to ensure the smooth flow of travelers. And the main point here is easy navigation that can prevent people from getting lost. This is achieved through subtle but very effective design cues. And placing duty-free zones between security checkpoints and boarding gates is one of them. They supposedly help you relax after clearing security and lead you where you need to go. But speaking of food, a celebrity chef restaurant at the airport might not be as good as it would be if you were visiting the real thing. Not chefs themselves, but special restaurant companies are responsible for airport outlets. One of the reasons is the extremely strict security that surrounds airport deliveries, including food. You may still have a nice meal, but it won't be the same. Now, I'll tell you about one more way airports manipulate you into spending your money. They make you walk through the shiny duty-free stores straight after the security check. But the most curious thing is that the walkway through such stores usually veers to the left. That's done because most people are right-handed, which means they use their right arm to pull their luggage and are more likely to look to the right while passing through the stores. And the duty-free zone veering to the left leaves more space on the right, where passengers are more likely to look. Oh, and have you ever noticed how many mirrors there are at airports? Mirrors are strategically placed there to make airports appear larger and create an illusion of more space. This in turn helps to reduce the feeling of claustrophobia and makes the airport experience more comfortable for travelers. If you have an opportunity, don't exchange cash at the airport. You'll never get a good rate there. Those who didn't buy local currency in advance can instead order it online and collect it at the airport. Some services only need a few hours' notice for such an order, or it might even be better to use an ATM to withdraw some cash at your final destination. Now, have you ever paid attention to airport codes? The most often used are 3-letter codes. Why this number? Back in the 1930s in the USA, pilots used the National Weather Service's 2-letter city codes to refer to airports. But soon, the number of airports in the country outgrew the number of such codes. That's why airlines expanded this system by adding the 3rd letter. It was usually X. That's how LA, Los Angeles, turned into LAX. But even though there shouldn't be 2 airports with the same code, some of these codes sound so similar you could easily mistake one for the other. For example, look at this airport with the code CGP in Bangladesh. And here we have CPG. It's the code of an airport in Argentina. It's dangerously easy to fly to the wrong place, so pay attention.
That's it for today. So hey, if you pacified your curiosity, then give the video a like and share it with your friends. Or if you want more, just click on these videos and stay on the bright side.